To rumble. Yeah. Welcome to Portal Mountain Development Meeting number 96. And this is number 15, I think, of our series on the Axiological conspiracy, which the purpose of that is to, in my mind anyways, flesh out, like, how do we get here? What was the problem? Like, where did we go wrong? Like, in a civilizational arc sense. And not even wrong in a sense. It's like these are natural progressions, but where do we miss something? Something wasn't carried forward. So that's kind of why there's been this kind of a bit of a retrospective, a pseudo meta history type of narrative.
I wouldn't even say missed. I would even say actively eliminated. It's even worse. It's even worse than.
Yeah, in the runaway sense, it's self-reinforcing and all that kind of stuff. Yes, but I don't want to like say, "Oh, this is bad" or blame this or that, because we just get into problems where you're making judgments against something when it's part of the puzzle that needs to be worked with.
It goes bad. Okay.
Yeah. So the ego is not bad, and the ego, speaking of how we define it, Freud referred to basically the self. That's what we would call the self, including the ego. The different, like, the self-image.
Freud's conception is excessively arbitrary to me. Like, I'm not claiming to be like a psychology expert and all of that stuff, but
Right.
the structure that he presented, it seemed to be more self-serving than actually useful. And I think the only use that came out of the whole picture is the psychoanalysis itself.
Yeah.
Like that conversation, that he opened that up, but the content of his work is just weird to me. So I'm only saying that because when I initially conceptualized this version of ego, I did not refer to neither Freud nor Jung or any of their work
Yeah,
as,
and
as a basis.
Even Freud is coming up with this. It's not like out of nowhere. It's like Greek philosophy and all this kind of stuff. Whatever.
Cognito ergo sum.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So it's not like it came out of nowhere. So there's this idea of like a structure within our neurochemistry that like maps our identity. It feels like a self, and you attach all these things, and all these things clump together to feel like a self. And it's a body navigating through space and time in an environment. The inner has to reflect the outer, otherwise you just bump into shit and get hurt all the time. You don't last very long, right? So
well, we've established that going full on science with that one, because you can see those kinds of stages in different life creatures, in different life forms. So what you're talking about, like having a reflection, can be noted inside like
an amoeba.
Yeah,
we like that example.
I like that example.
So simplistic.
Because it's like right in your face. Its cellular wall gets depressed. That depression causes a chemical reaction. That chemical reaction causes a turn. That turn causes depression to come back to its normal state. It continues forward. So it bumping into something causes it to turn.
Yep. And then once it's no longer bumping into something, there's no reason to turn.
Yeah, look at the former structure gets reinitialized, and the forward motion continues. And the turn itself is very, very interesting in the sense that because of the depressed area, that area doesn't work the same way. That change in potential is causing a rotational motion, right? That reforms it back to the way it was before. It's so dead simple.
Interesting.
So all we've done is we've taken that idea a little bit further. So instead of mapping the immediate outside external environment, you have a mapping of your mapping. Take that idea and extend that further, a mapping of mapping of mapping.
You mean like a map of the mapper?
Yeah. So like not only is the external environment has reflections, those things that reflect the external environment have internal reflections inside too. manipulate them. And then you just pile on the layers like that until you get to a fully functional human brain.
Right.
Which, if you look at the nervous system, the first thing it's in contact with is every single area of your body. So it's your body communicating with itself. And then there's a centralization of that nervous system that allows the nerves to talk to the nerves about the body. Right? So you're seeing that reflection or in operation in this
But it's not like we're doing it. It's been done. We tend to just collect things together.
So I'm thinking that further by elaborating on that whole polyglottic coin relay.
Polyglottic coin relay. So we're just on a little bit of a break there, but yeah, we've been doing these meetings for years now, and before the axiological conspiracy, the myth of the axiological conspiracy, we were talking about. I think it was probably developing the book for quite a while, and before that, of course, just various topics. It is a bit tough to keep track of. I do have a centralized document for it all, but doing the transcripts for each meeting, like it's a lot of work. Been slacking on that.
Man, we have so much explanatory power.
Yeah, it gets carried away, so that's can be an issue.
No, it's a sledgehammer for sure. Well, we're sweating flies with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, that seems true. Just posted the meeting to the lobby. You got your sound on? I have my sound on too, because I was waiting for your call today. So yeah, the axiological conspiracy been going on that pretty strong for a while. I feel like maybe part of our challenge is like documentation, keeping track, reading notes, all of that. That would help. But we've enjoyed the wandering, meandering sort of archetype.
You cannot rely on me to take notes.
I know that.
Because I can either do the thinking or
I mean,
and explaining, or I can
with AI even already a transcript can come off of it,
Sure.
and they can summarize it, all the main points, and you don't even have to touch. Nobody does anything. Right? So I'd like to get to that. Get to that. Yeah.
I love how when I got the AI to write the summary for like the dev meeting here, it's like, make sure you got all your materials prepared.
Shit.
I was like, oh wow,
Started
this
getting
thing's not kidding around.
started getting anxiety.
No shit, right? It's like, oh wow, that's some serious business.
Ensure your materials are prepared beforehand. That's just generic, idealized
I
stuff.
know.
But these types of structures are fine. I was talking with my cousin, and he was saying, like, yeah, you don't have to, like, even just because you have an appointment, it doesn't mean that can't be pushed around or rescheduled or anything. The only thing that it really, like, kind of or pressures you to do is if you're not making that time to update it before the time comes.
Yeah.
That's it. Just that you're committing to basically writing a note over and over again for all eternity is the worst case.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you have to do something, but I love that we've started up into this ClickUp app. Pretty sweet. Are you looking for Christian? What is it? Some foolish.
Oh, I just got this on my screen.
Hater. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What the did you just say to me? You. I'll have you know I did 7 tours in Afghanistan. Yeah. Yeah. So 65 members. Those are rookie numbers.
I'd rather the 65 we have.
Bump those numbers up.
I'd rather the 65 we do have than
anything else. Yeah.
Than the alternative.
I'm just joking. I'm just trying to catch your attention.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So. The ClickUps, pretty cool. And we can use that, like, we've been enjoying, as I was saying, that just kind of discover casual discussion, not like agenda driven. You know what I mean? Like, we'll try to have like the topic, but like we haven't written notes even in a long time, like beforehand. Like sometimes we would plan.
Well, I think that the holiday season is kind of also stressful in its own way. Like, our time was not spent on this project, pretty much. So.
That's right. Yeah.
I'd rather just hit the shit today.
I like it like that. Yeah. No, that's what we're doing. That's my plan, anyways. But I want to mention the tools, like I think it's a positive.
We're starting to get tools, yeah.
Thing to get into, just for organization, because like there's so much. I've been working. I put in, I don't know, 8 hours or more, just going through our existing projects and then referencing them in the project management software with notes, with a task saying to review and update this and a direct link to what you're supposed to review and update. Right?
Does the AI read the docs yet? Or?
No, that would be something ChatGPT does, I think. I don't know. You would think so. Yeah, like it obviously should. Like you can start a project in ChatGPT and add documents to the project, like so it has access.
I remember GPT choked on perception mechanics for some reason. I think it got put off by its cultish vibes. Because then it blocked me from uploading any other file.
Interesting. Huh.
It was a while ago now. I haven't tried since.
Yeah, probably just a weird error. But that sounds like you can't upload anymore. That sounds weird.
No, it sounds like it picked up on something it didn't like and tried to censor me.
Right. Huh.
like the whole thing was about how the guy takes the guy through the various locations, starting at the embassy, moving through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm just getting caught up in the thoughts of converting a polyglottic coin relay in theory into an actionable uh, scenario of like
Well,
of ingress and all this kind of stuff.
it's okay. So that piece of the
There's
model
some mindfuck there.
is not meant for like, oh, how do we meditate on that? It's more like to bridge the false notion of that there's a disconnect between the body and the mind, right? That's what that's for. It's just like it shows you the step-by-step link towards it, with the polyglottic coin relay being the final structure that allows for this whole narratological sense of self.
Right.
So that's the medium.
For like a subject and all of its objects or something to be existing,
Right.
calculated.
It for our purposes it behaves as a medium. So that neurochemical operating system, it's structured in a polyglottic coin relay. That shape is what allows it to
Right.
be all mirror reading.
And actually what I was thinking of was connecting that to mastery and grand mastery, as in just kind of like shape-shifting to these different language sets.
So the mastery and the grand mastery would be on top of this medium. There is a representation of that same medium and how it operates, because it doesn't have to.
That would be mastery, and it's going to come through probably one temperament, primary like academic, but then grand mastery being able to reproduce that in the other temperaments.
Yes, which is just the same thing but stretched slightly different. At the very least, we're not tagging on even more model at that point. Once you've mastered, that's what you've mastered, the model. Mm-hmm. So we're not like layering on even more difficult model. It's just, oh, you can look at it.
Yeah. So that's what stumped me up a little bit there.
But yeah, you're right. Because of the polyglottic nature of the coin relay, that jumping
AI could just probably
natural.
Flipped its shit when it hit that. Maybe, I don't know. That was just a guess. Maybe it's. Well, no, probably you wouldn't think so. You're probably right. Something got triggered, which would be a weird thing. Like they don't want research into something, or who knows what.
It must have been a phrase or some shit like that.
Yeah. I've actually never tried uploading documents.
It's the one that's the most authoritative in its approach. It's like, do this, then do that, then do this. So it's like, maybe it got accomplished by. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it for that particular write-up.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's that tendency for abstractions to be descriptive and concretions to be prescriptive. You see that dichotomy.
And it's an extreme concrete, so...
Yeah. Between the perceptive and the academic temperaments being on the outside, but also opposites to each other. Sort of.
They're like complementary.
Yeah, mirrors, parallels, whatever. Not opposite. They actually look very similar.
Not only that, each one contains the other within itself. Is the best way I can put it. Holographic.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right in that we can use this whole idea of polyglottic coin relay to sort of explain how you can have like a self-similar medium that apparently does this and that and this and that and that. you know. And that's what you're talking about with Grandmaster. It's like taking the original structure and then reframe it in a different language, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Same idea. It's already in the medium. The only difference is doing it willingly or have it, or it does it by itself without your even acknowledgement on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. That's a common common theme. The point being awareness, so that
It also points us in the direction of why knee-jerk reactions happen.
so that impulses can be intercepted. That's why awareness is required. Otherwise, you can't intercept the impulse. You don't recognize it as something different than anything else.
That it is in fact only an impulse until it becomes anything else.
There's that too. Would be kind of like the master, I guess.
Well, that's
Or
integrating.
an entryway.
That's integrating the correct abstraction for what that is within your mental framework.
Sure, and that would be an important part.
Right. Because without that abstraction, what does awareness have to latch on to?
To make to affect some sort of change.
Right. Keep that off.
Mm-hmm. And we'll take a short break. Be right back. And we're back. And we. Mm-hmm. And we are back. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about tools and all that, but we really today want ideally get through at the axiological conspiracy.
No, I think we've covered it.
We were just talking about
More like Fallout stuff, you know.
Polyglot coin relay.
Polyglot coin relay. That's right. That's a mouthful.
The PGQR in relation to Grandmaster. The picker. Pigger. That sounds racist.
Pigger.
Against livestock, I guess.
Oh shit! I just realized. Sorry.
Slap.
My bad.
What? Oh,
I was thinking like bigger.
The P word. Yeah, right.
I didn't register that.
Okay, so yeah, the connection between that and the Grandmaster. That was kind of a neat aside. That's just whatever you want to call it. Just vibing about the model. We typically do. Sometimes it'll happen.
On the bus. Vibing to hot bus and model.
Yeah, so it would have been like it's nice. We got at 15 episodes of the Axiological Conspiracy series. It's always going to be nice to think if it were wrapped up. Of course, doesn't mean we have to wrap it up. We've been mentioning that and trying for like the last 5.
As a subject, it can never be wrapped
Okay,
up
you're
because
right. But what's missing?
It's the zeitgeist, right? It's the actual like the problem is still present regardless of which angle of attack you're discussing of it. It's not like it goes away from that, right? It's just we're still modeling different issues and aspects.
Okay, so I like that you mentioned the zeitgeist. It seems like that's a great entry point into like the purpose and thinking and feeling of why even look into the axiological conspiracy. It's because there's an ever-present shared understanding or narrative that shit is fucked up and like it's just accelerating into worse and you feel bad. So this causes.
So rather than a quantifiable narrative, it's a qualitative feeling. It is a feeling that is embedded in practically all what do you call it? All of your activity, mental and physical.
Right. So in other words, it's probably sensed most normally by most people as some sort of mild background depression, and not any sort of intellectual understanding of the world.
Right, and also more like this is the way things are. So it's not like there's something to fix.
Right.
It's just what else did you expect out of life?
And yeah, this isn't related to there's like a zeitgeist movie or something.
No.
This is just the term zeitgeist.
Yes.
Has been used, I guess, through history.
The first of the series was all right.
I don't think I ever watched those.
But
this is like a logical, like rational brain dude, like just processing through a bunch of stuff, I guess.
Like the idea behind it, I could stand behind. But the problem with the
was he trying to reify a narrative?
By the third movie, he basically calls his audience stupid. Because like the line that he blurts out is like, "What are we fucking stupid?" And as I'm watching this movie, it's like, okay, you're not really saying anything more. you're not really helping move away from the issues that you're discussing.
Mm.
And now you are
Punishing
not
yourself and everyone else.
now instead of like taking whatever it is you're noticing into a hopeful sort of direction, you become a cynic.
You're using what you pointed at against yourself and others.
Yeah, you're just becoming a cynic at this point, and you're like ranting about the issue now instead of, like the first time, introduce an interesting subject. And
Mhm.
right, wrong,
You're right.
whatever. I'm not even commenting on how much I agree or disagree about the content because I don't honestly remember a whole lot of it.
Yeah, I might have seen parts of like maybe clips a long time ago, but I didn't watch it. But I just wanted to mention like this
Yeah.
is it. We use it as it's a different term.
The first
It's
movie
a
had a nice
generic term.
The first movie had a nice bit about the three wise men mythology and how it's actually um, it existed before the whole Jesus story
Mhm.
in different ways,
That goes through time.
but in particular it would I believe it's about where the sun sets at a particular time of year, and I think it has to do with the sun traveling to that point and then traveling back. I don't remember the specifics behind it, but it was interesting.
Mhm.
So it was like a calendar thing, which in most of the zodiac stuff it really is about keeping track of calendars and maps.
Yeah, like
And navigation.
if you look out your window, you can see that during the transition to winter, from summer to winter, the sun is tilting away from us. So its arcs are lower or something
to the side.
south, right? They're lower arcs, but when we tilt towards it, the arcs are getting higher. So it looks like the sun is setting and rising in different
Places.
spots of the horizon. It's because we're either towards it or
Yeah.
not.
So it was pretty interesting, like from that kind of stuff. Like, that's not something I knew
What
about.
does that have any three
Nothing.
wise men? What does it have to do with anything?
Nothing.
Okay.
So the one thing that I found
All
interesting
right.
from that
Was an
movie is
aside.
it completely,
Fuck.
and I don't even know how true it is. It's mostly like, huh, interesting. I mean, I can ride with that story, but I don't need to like it be completely 100% true. It could be whatever. Like, nobody gives a shit at this point.
It's somehow related to the three wise men, and I'm assuming the North Star.
It had something to do with how wrong we were about our knowledge of the Bible. It's some lecture bullshit.
Yeah, right.
And I do enough of that myself already.
But we're getting better. We're improving. So let's say we've got this, what do you call it? Zeitgeist.
Right.
That this is this seems like an anchor, a foundational point, and it's come up a lot through these discussions. The fact of the zeitgeist, this is referring to the soul, which is and we've described the soul. So from top down, we go like zeitgeist, soul, and then start getting into like technical, like phenomenological stuff. And ultimately, we land at like the dawn of civilization. Like I'm trying to like arc a narrative for what this axiological conspiracy, how it goes through time.
So we backtrack to
We start at our current point, which is why you would even care, and then move it to that the dawn of civilization, basically, right?
Right. So you're going from like the social aspect that like why would as a society you care about any of this in the first place, but most of the stuff that we've been talking about starts from the person on the inside. You're just bridging the gap between that by uh, striking those chords by going backwards from zeitgeist to soul, the individual,
Right.
and then into their phenomenological
Yeah,
narratives.
This presentation would be have a hook or a catch to it that people should be able to feel and understand. Like the zeitgeist, it's something. Can you feel it or no? Right? It's that kind of a
And
question.
then you have to like
And then
qualify
okay, what
it.
is this? What is the zeitgeist? Yeah, I guess that sounds like that's probably primary in my thinking there as to why to do it that way. because we end up there.
Yeah.
It's this accumulation of the soul, expansion of what we call the soul.
Well, the zeitgeist and the soul, the way we are using the terminology at least, they are the qualitative um, background that drives the the, the the desire to locate the source of this quality and understand it to begin with and put it into its rightful place because the feeling, the qualitative feeling itself, is that of alienation to begin with. So you start off from the recognition of something's just not right, right? Um, so yeah, it's going to be the reason behind. In Buddhist terminology, it's like this is dukkha, right? This is the suffering that the Buddhists are talking about as well. Like, that's the correlation that we should be thinking about here.
Which is unnecessary,
right? But because it's ever present and it's always there as a qualitative essence of the state that you're in, right? There's a fork in the road at some point, that of bewilderment or that of search, right? And we are straddling the search branch of that outcome. Sorry.
All good, buddy. And we'll take a short break. All right, and we're back. Yep. So yeah, this is theory of the zeitgeist and the soul. I like how you put that. Response to this suffering can be bewilderment or search. One or the other.
That's straight up from Buddhist texts that I'm copying.
Makes sense. Well, the bewilderment is just
Yes.
an overwhelmness that you block it out. You repress it,
You
basically.
become catatonic and all that crap.
Yeah.
Quote unquote. I'm not talking about flat out.
No, you will pathologize, basically.
Yeah, fight or freeze.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And at all costs, try never to encounter that again.
Mhm.
Right? It becomes a invalid territory of the
Aversion.
Yeah.
Which, and again, if we go back to Buddhism, aversion is, yes, it's a negation of desire, but because it is a desire to avoid something, it's not like, you see, it's an
There's a desire in it
yeah,
as well.
it's like you
Of course.
one step forward, two steps back.
Right. Yeah.
So avarice is not something that is supported by our paradigm either. So the idea isn't to like get out of the zeitgeist, but rather study it in its fullness, like, and that's where the model comes into put into place.
At least you could say that that's a justification for this document or whatever we're creating.
And this conversation,
It's due to such
the
search,
last 10 years,
such search and investigation.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, I think that's more of a devotional / perceptive approach, what you're talking about, because it's like starts off with
Mm-hmm.
concrete sense.
Yeah, I can't see anything else being a broadly useful and powerful presentation.
So the only caveat that I do see though is if you're talking about another person or another party or whatever that this is being introduced to, right? They already have to have some kind of buy-in, if you will, on the whole zeitgeist / dukkha / suffering background as a truth, like an apprehension that it is there, and it's not,
Yeah.
and it's not a random something. It's not a random
You're
abstract idea.
you're
It's an
probably
experience.
right, and I don't know if it's half the population, maybe like willing to entertain like I feel like I'm getting fucked over in this life and society, and I don't know if it's
Willing to not willing to entertain, but willing to entertain, so sustain that entertainment, like, because
right. Just the idea shit's fucked, and I want to do something about it. That's
like everybody will have
not
that
everyone is pushed to
moment.
that point.
Not everybody will have that moment, but it's not always going to be part of a greater context in which it fits to do something about that, right? Like in the moment, it will come and go. But if you structure that based on the model continuously, if you're motivated to do that,
right? So this is a path for pressure to go through, as opposed to just cycling of discarding that energy, somehow getting it out some way. A meaningful path, right?
exactly.
So something to do about it. And what is it? Well, we're presenting a lot of things all at once, and that's kind of the tough part. It's like, what is it? What do you do about it?
Right. You have
so many things.
We have our biology to consider, which bring up the proposition that we're running a mental simulation of the world around us. Problem number one. How accurate is that representation? All of that jazz. Problem number two. It's not modeling itself. It's modeling something about itself, but not its whole, not the whole thing.
Right.
So it's wishing. So it's that.
And interestingly, how to do that is like through phenomenology. Through like Husserl, he has some weird words for like bracketing reality. In other words, turning off your own value judgments about things and objects in front of you, the thoughts that you have about them, turning that off, and just trying to see what's happening
Yeah.
phenomenologically once you clear out all those extra thoughts that keep
What's
popping up.
interesting there is that we have a lot of descriptions like that from Buddhists, from him, from other places, right? They talk about all this turning off and on and whatever, but I think we're the only model right now that I'm aware of. This is probably just my ignorance, though, where we have the discussion of the APS, and in that APS we have our subject mountains, we have our um, types that appear in the peaks, and then we have like the entire show running as objects after the fact.
Yep.
Right? So with that structure in mind, what we're talking about shutting off is actually taking the same types and um, objects in one peak and transplanting them onto a different peak, giving it a different context instead. So you can visualize not only what you're working with, but the entire model of where to place it, like what to look for, how to approach that. Because if you remember, like the reason that it's all like fucked up in a way is because they're abstractions to begin with, and abstractions have like isomorphisms with different abstractions. Remember, we're on a polyglot line that just like speaks different languages as it needs to. So it doesn't know that it's reading it wrong or in the wrong language or whatever. So you're now telling it, no, pay attention to that part of it. Am I choosing the right context? You have all of these different things to piggyback on. Okay, I'm not just shutting off thoughts, because how do you do that?
No.
You're transposing them from one set of realities into a different one on purpose, and you pick a purposeful method of doing that, and you learn to do that. That's the whole point of meditation.
Okay, so you're talking about transposing through one
Context.
field of thought, context, the field of thought being like through ego contextuality, potentially like transactional nature of a web of things.
Mm-hmm.
As you're looking at an object, and in that moment you decide, okay, let's try flip the lens, and now it's just a holonic model, and now you're seeing like that same object you're looking at, maybe it's a person, is now on a different peak in a different mountain range, kind of. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But totally different contextually.
Right. Maybe like visualize something like being on a desert mound and all of a sudden being in the jungle. Right.
As an exercise, I mean, this is what I kept bringing up. We've never talked about this, but in chat on Socks, I keep bringing up um, that the choice to do something different, and that's what we're talking about now. Like in an encounter, I use the example a couple of times. It's like if your buddy was about to give you cash for you doing something or whatever, and you just said no, in that moment that you decided, or maybe you were going to accept the cash, you agreed, but then you're like, you can have a choice, a different mind, and in that moment they are taken into a different mountain range. Basically, they're not a client contextualized as a business, like
imagine
getting a money out of something.
What I'm imagining is a scam. On the one side of the scam, the person who is believing the scammer, right? Their money is going towards such and such and such and such. That's the next logical part of my story. From the scammer's perspective, they're going along with that story, but they're projecting that story over here, and they're walking that way.
Yeah. So you're talking about even interpersonal and how the object in this question is the money itself, where people are thinking, having totally different mountain ranges basically for where this money object is sitting in.
Yeah.
To use that metaphor.
These are examples of where we have the same thing. Technically, objectively speaking, we could say it's the same thing if we take the entire subjectivity out of the picture, which obviously you can't. But whatever. And then the even you and me sitting here looking at this table, you're seeing it from this angle, I'm seeing it from that angle. Technically, it's the same
Yes,
table,
well,
but we're having a
I
totally
mean,
different view of it.
here, hold on. Of course,
Like
everyone
that.
else is going to definitely. But what we were saying earlier, I think, is even within our own psyche, within our own mind, we also have this sort of dilemma of perspective. And sometimes it can be a perspective based in the ego transaction where you're essentially, it's like a scarcity sort of vibe, fearful vibe. Oh, I better get my money because I need it. Rather
Yeah.
than just, I can do this for you, I can do this for you.
You know, you don't always have to mention ego transactions because the biggest difference in the two frameworks is one is qualitative, the other is quantitative. So the ego transaction is always the quantitative one. So even if you just say quantification or quantifying this, or just like taking a symbol and representing it with the symbol as if it was the real thing, that's
quantified through transaction.
There's no other way to quantify, really.
Transactions must be quantified.
Right.
Yeah, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. And we'll take a short break. Then we back.
Those are way back.
Things being better is good. That's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So quantification, qualification. Those are the two
That's a nice.
main thought experiments that I have
Mhm.
with this model.
That's true, and that very well distinguishes ego from self.
Right. The ego in this case is all quantification, no qualification. Like it's an extreme sort of hijacking of the self-narrative, which is effectively both, right? So you have quantified and qualified um, interactions with your environment. The quantified stuff is like getting your food, cleaning your room, you know, but eating, feeling clean, all of those are qualities that you experience, right?
Yeah.
They're not, you can't quantify. Sure, you can quantify the fact that there's 0 germs in area XYZ, right? That you can do that, but that doesn't mean fuck all, unless you're feeling like nice and refreshed and all of that kind of stuff. You know?
Right.
But there's this constant back and forth, which the ego removes an aspect of. All quantification, no qualification. So it doesn't care about your feelings, so long as you're doing task X, task Y, task Z.
Mm-hmm. And this is why we go along with that distinction between the self and ego. We mentioned Freud a while ago, and then punched him. And there's a distinction between right in the scrote, ego and self. The way that ego is used in society, the way normal people, when you hear ego, it's always a negative connotation, right?
Well,
ego, you're being egoic.
Except for
you have
them
a big
objectivists.
Ego. You have a big ego. Okay.
Except for them crazy objectivists.
I guess. Well, fuck them.
But no, like if you read up about there, they have like the ego is like the fundamental unit.
You're talking the Ayn Rand types. Yeah. No.
I didn't say I agree. I'm just saying that there's one school of thought out there that's
good.
Not only good, but necessary, fundamental, and from everything else kind of flows from it.
So it's like always such a delicate balance, a dance.
It's like saying that your best self-interest is it is for the benefit of society somehow, without really going into, well, how do you build a person up like that to begin with?
Yeah, like sure, in theory,
and also it literally shuns altruism. Like it basically calls it the devil or some shit like that.
No,
it's got like it's a swear word for objectivists.
So Freud, when he said ego, he basically meant the self, the I narrative. That's what he was talking about. So, and nobody really distinguished that I know of until Fromm between this market orientation of the ego and he called it productive orientation, which is kind of an unfortunate word, but still this idea of there being a market orientation and a productive orientation.
He called the other one productive. Okay.
Yeah, like the natural, if you will.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's why I said unfortunate, but still.
Okay.
The point is to the ego, whatever was conceptualized psychoanalytically as the ego back then, was split up into, let's say, two major types. These market orientation and a productive orientation.
So would it fit with quantitative, qualitative divisions?
I believe so. Yeah.
So it's the same track then. At the very least, it's on the same. It's hitting the same notes.
Right. Yeah. So, and I've been trying to find like
This
look
isn't the common framework for work that I've seen.
for what kind of work.
It takes like our context as a human being and then sort of extrapolates various qualitative and quantitative aspects. Like it usually just goes one way or the other. Either we have like this weird soul-like entity that nobody can grasp, which is sitting somewhere outside of the body complex,
Mm-hmm.
and then basically everything that denies that. So it's either like it's all
Right.
purely physical,
Split in half.
it's pure
The
physicalism, or
classic.
pure arbitrary mentalism,
The classic split.
right? Which we wholeheartedly, I hope I can speak for both of us, do not whatsoever support in any way.
Yeah. Even
We are
talking about
different.
it, even pointing to it, pointing at it is something of a challenge for
It's,
everybody.
it's weird to even like assume that.
Right. So my point there was instead of ego just being some vague, generalized thing of like a self-image, um, we we found it like coherent to have this. It's almost like two layers: a self and an ego, one above the other. Ego is in its own way recreating and replicating the image in a totalizing way of the self below it. So it's possible for somebody not to realize the broader self upon which this transactional type of thing happens. But of course, the cracks are always there. Um, people, the zeitgeist again is just pushes you right into that, and you have no choice
It's
but to see it,
it's because no matter how much you quantify, qualities don't magically disappear.
right? Still feels like shit,
They're
etc.
neglected. They're neglected,
Yeah,
but they don't disappear. And that lack of attribution
yeah.
is the is what
This
we're
is the
calling
ultimate
the quality.
justification for expecting, uh, like activism in a general term.
That it would stir an activity.
Yeah.
Yes, because the quality is ever present,
Mhm.
and the quality is not positive.
Right. So this is like the theoretical framework for where does the energy come from and what we're describing.
So, problem though, that is the same energy that feeds ego. If you redirect it back into like egoistic, quantifiable um, tasks, you continue to. It's like it's like you're continuing to neglect while thinking you're not neglecting, which exacerbates the neglect.
Mhm.
Like,
Exacerbate.
yeah, like you're basically believing that you're doing something for that, and yet you're still neglecting it,
Yeah.
and
Precuperation
and then that neglect plus the additional neglect is actually backfiring constantly.
of activism.
Dare I say it? Maybe this is how you start a depression in a person, constantly neglecting their well-being
Right. Yeah.
and presenting the not neglect of the being as further neglect of the being
I like
is just,
I like having
of course you're
language.
gonna sink.
I like having language for it. To me, language is
Like, I
kind of
hesitate
freeing.
to go this route because I don't want to like. I understand that clinical depression is a really serious fucking problem for people, so I'm not trying to belittle
Obviously.
um, the position that they're in. What I'm trying to sort of establish, I guess, is that the roots of something like that could be taking place because of this continual denial of our internal lives.
Yeah. So it's a catch-22.
So if you start out with a young kid who's always denied their internal life, by the time that they are cognitive of how to think about life, they're not going to like it very much. That's just it just
Yep.
makes sense to progress that way for the most part.
Yeah. So there's a massive like inertia, um, like
And then the same kinds of people are the ones that bring
Over
the next
time,
generation up,
over
and they
time
don't know any
related.
better,
Yeah,
and
of
so it
course.
continues.
Over time related inertia.
Right. So it's a juggernaut that it's basically once it catches momentum, you can't stop it.
And you're talking about civilization from the dawn, like
Yeah, like the
this
holistic picture, not
coming.
like each individual goes through the same sort of narratological arc because it's the same beating out of you, your needs, right? Everybody's got to have their needs beaten out of them, one by one. So yes, there's a collective, everybody's
Right.
already
So
been
yeah,
beaten, and then there's the ongoing beating for every new successive generation. And by beating, I don't mean physical, I mean mental, of course. That's just
so
the
to me,
metaphor.
like the document or whatever it is, the axiological conspiracy is like designed, if you will, or should be designed to slot into that concern, if you will, these feelings that people feel,
Mhm.
and not have it be recuperated instantly back into various like identities and all this.
Right, like, so what are you doing about it? Well, meditating? Oh, you're meditating about it. You're not doing anything about it. Well,
Right.
that's the recuperated way
That's a
of thinking.
problem. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if the individual who's meditating does that, a next individual who does that, and if you have a big enough group of individuals doing that, there's a threshold you pass, and you don't need to do anything
Well,
about it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. So
It's an emergent thing.
with like a Portal Mountain based related identity, part of that identity would of course has to be like there's some minimum thresholds for participation, meditation, like
Yeah.
the ability to
The quality of the
having a
zeitgeist
moment
being
to,
recognized.
if you don't have a moment even to just slow down and think about your thoughts, then you can't participate.
Right. If you can't slow down enough to like uh, qualify a particular feeling that is reflective in everybody you're meeting, if you like, if you can't step back long enough to see like, oh, there's like this, again, zeitgeist, right? Like the overarching quality. Or wait a minute, everybody's got it. If you're not slowing it down enough to even see that, where's the conversation? There's no zeitgeist for you.
Yeah, right.
So there has to be a kind of a desire. So this is past the point of the splits. There's a bewilderment, which is like you can't talk to that. It's the search. Those who search will also listen because they're looking. They're looking for it.
Right. There's almost like you can't help ourselves but listen to somebody who purports to have some information or discussion about what you're existentially interested in.
I think this is the only case for that great attractor or something. No, that's a space thing. Um, there's this like, it's bullshit in general, but there's like this attraction theory, like things combine or something naturally.
New Age.
Yeah, it's kind of it's like I said, for the most part, I believe it's bullshit. This is like the one kind of situation. This
Like
zeitgeist.
attracts like.
Yeah, the zeitgeist,
True.
because the zeitgeist is universal in its conception from our perspective. It being that universal is what is allowing the same ground, the same medium to be used to communicate.
Same context.
Exactly.
Right. That's why it's such an amazing anchor to begin with and move through.
But the word zeitgeist is triggering. The word soul, even more so.
Yep.
So let's go with that after I come back, because we should discuss that. What do we want to say by soul? What do we want to say by self? And from the polyglottic wine relay perspective, there's also the self-reference,
Right.
which is another medium.
And we'll be right back. And we back.
Yeah.
So we're talking about moving down through this narrative arc, through the zeitgeist,
To
the
get
soul, and all that.
yeah
We're getting into the neurochemical operating system.
yeah. So from the big picture to the individual, from the individual to their mental makeup, from the mental makeup to their organisms, is the trajectory I kind of am taking here. The We've already touched on this medium
It's a
a little bit.
self model. Basically, you could
Right.
look at yourself and see where you're at. Oh, I have
Yeah.
all these attachments and the affect jungle, I like to call it. Um, these
Yeah.
accumulations of experiences. Each experience was in the moment, contextualized, and a whole bunch of things. You're all inspired together, wired together. You've got a whole bunch of bundles all throughout your history of experiencing different types of objects, and that's what you have to draw on these narratives of things that happen to you as a sequence of moments.
And now, like a few more abstractions just to help the ride along. There's what we call affect. There's what we call our signal to object brain chart that talks about moving up the layers. And all of that is just to give some sort of background of understanding for the kinds of mediums that we're trying to discuss. Because a medium is a big part of, as a concept, is a big part of the model itself proper.
Right. It implies the stacking of layers.
The stacking of layers. It implies all of the
because
protocol
a medium is a layer, basically. Right?
Yeah. And there's that protocol discussion, and there is like upload, download, reification, encoding, decoding, all of that sort of, that's really fundamental to how the holonic structure is built. But the point being is that we've already touched on a medium called the polyglottic quine relay, right? Which is a low level medium that is relevant.
Lower.
Yeah, is relevant for very, very specific technical sort of discussions. The only thing we want to say there is this is why we think the brain works. Position it this way, right? That's the only thing that's for. It's just like, this is how we picture the brain actually talking to itself, right?
Yeah, if you want to try and quantify it in a way to structuralize it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, because it's structured in a quine relay, there's another concept, kind of like a same low-level tech level, but a little bit higher. And I call that the self-reference. So the self-reference is part and parcel of the very medium of the mind talking, right? And because it's a self-referencing structure, what the mind is doing is talking to its self. It doesn't talk to the outside world. It talks to itself, and those reflections bubble out into actions and feedback into self-talk.
Right.
And I'm not talking about like holding a conversation in English.
No, we're talking about like standing in a field and having your self-image calculated as well with the images of flowers or trees and what they mean to you in the moment. You calculate, who am I, but what is that object to me?
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, we do that. We like translate our being onto everything in our experience.
The fact that you're calling that a tree, the tree didn't say it's a tree.
No. But we project this translation through the quine relay.
Yeah, that's how you would picture the outflow of what I'm saying. So,
and it's like a world with multiple beings is created within that medium.
Interestingly enough, mythology follows that pattern. The world composed of different beings and gods and goddesses and all that kind of spiritual stuff, right? But I digress. That's a tangent.
That's cool.
That really, it's just meant to like point as to where that comes from.
The thought that I get from that is that everything is accounted for and it should be accounted for. Not that our model that we've like touched every last aspect, but
No, we don't see atoms. We don't see we
when
don't
you
see the air.
when you find these connection points and you think them through and they're coherent, then you add that to the model. That's the way of
That's the
thinking.
whole idea of resonance waves rather than a wave, like a particle wave. It's a wake of like a potentiality. You don't know where the energy transforms into because it's a mental landscape. But all of that energy gets fed and refracted back
Right.
in a similar metaphorical sense.
And like the fact that this polyglottic quantum relay is an existent structure within our neurochemistry, and even more like this multiple being identity within a relation, like within an environment, like to seeing all this, that's default. We don't have to think about that being a way that's how we think at all. That's how we
Given
think.
to us.
It's given to us.
Given by the medium.
Our reality is going to be
brain.
structured in this way no matter what. These are universalities that like Husserl was after by bracketing reality to just see what is of the mind, right?
I wouldn't know, but yeah, probably.
I just
don't have reference.
I downloaded a book.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I
find him
you.
interesting. I don't know, like, but yeah, like he was like the father of phenomenology. That's what they call him. So just from that alone,
I'm sorry, but that's Buddha.
It can't be right. Father of modern phenomenology. I think that's what people say. But like, if you're looking into
there's
like thinkers and tracks, he would be like the first one for phenomenology.
Yeah, there's the monk that I read usually for Buddhism stuff is Tensaro Bhikkhu. Bhikkhu being nomenclature for monk.
Right.
But his exposition on the Buddhist doctrine is that the Buddha was a radical phenomenologist. Like that's what he literally referred to him.
I agree.
Like not just phenomenology, but like radical. Nothing is except phenomenology. And that's what made the Buddhist doctrine that much different than the existing doctrines, even though they actually use the exact same languages and to describe things.
Yeah.
They actually arrive at a very different.
I have this intuition. It's a weird. I don't know how to prove it or anything like that, but I think I just lost my train of thought.
An intuition with regards to Buddhism? An analogy?
Phenomenology.
In relation to other doctrines.
You have to go through phenomenology to strip bare everything within your own conscious capacity to see a firm ground to stand on. And that this is maybe the only universal ground that we all share and that anybody could potentially do is to strip bare everything and see your own inner processes and build up how they work. Like create an entire isomorphic structure within your APS, your model. To model the whole thing top to bottom. This is the only common shared ground that we truly share outside of intellectual rambling or theories.
So nirvana.
I don't know if
the description you used, the strip bare and leave what's left.
At least in the moment of investigation, I meant not that that's your permanent experience.
Well, no,
but
because
in investigating, it's going to be
fabrications, as they are called in Buddhism, will always arise.
Okay, yeah.
There's nirvana in the moment, and then there's
so bracketing
after death.
Bracketing, as Husserl described it, is
nirvana should be looked like a verb. It's something you will do purposefully.
The letting go of fabrication,
and you decide that within each moment.
Right, fabrication. That's a great point that you brought that up because that's what Husserl wants to set aside in the bracketing.
Because remember, you're not eliminating fabrication. You're noticing what they are for what they are.
Of course.
And that they are not part
of
the ground.
That's even right.
So they're still there.
But the way they come through and present is part of that ground as well. Just that their content.
Their content, their causal content that's causal is the thing that's burnt up. They don't have the capacity to continue to fabricate and refabricate because you are seeing them at their root. You see them pop up, and it's like a flame without a wick. Right? It has nothing to latch on to. So yeah, it popped up because of causes and conditions, but because it has nothing to latch on to as a fuel, there's nothing to keep feeding it. The flame just dissipates back into its cool potential state.
Sure. And which part of coherence in Buddhism terms is this?
Nirvana. Grand mastery.
Um,
Mastery is the same.
I don't know,
Because what you said is you install an isomorphic model within your mind to see that ground state.
Yeah.
But once you do that, you can't unsee it. Right? Everything's going to be now.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
And in the Buddhist language, this is like, that's the universal state. That's the fucking thing we're talking about.
Well, it's the same idea of stream entry.
Right.
When you see something you can't unsee, like your core identity has shifted to like a meta identity.
Everything is restructured around it, yeah.
Right.
Different peaks, same objects.
Right. And with that, we'll be right back.
I think it's pretty fucking cool that intellectually, at least, you've arrived at the very heart of what made Buddhism Buddhism. The idea behind this ground that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Metaphorically, of course.
Right.
This universality between it that's shared, which is one of the reasons why Buddhism is usually presented as something that's available for everybody. Right?
Exactly.
As a rhetorical device.
Right, that seems powerful that way.
Yeah, except everybody else says the exact same shit. So it kind of gets lost, and how is that not like everybody else? That kind of situation. Which is fair enough.
Right.
We identify that as charlatanism. Not to mention, not everybody is doing Buddhism the correct, the Buddhist way, if you will. And so a lot of it becomes more show than
there's a
substance.
phenomenology there. And you're right to say that, like, it's Buddhism, of course, more ancient. All these were shoulders of giants standing. Any philosopher is just blessed with the past of all before.
Yeah.
Ideally, this is
I
kind
don't
of
even want
like
to call this a philosophy,
super
to be honest,
privilege,
because
even.
philosophy is.
I just mean thinkers.
Philosophy is like a
I mean
bubble
thinkers.
of its own. You know?
What do you call it? Thinkers, writers?
No, I get the sentiment.
That's
I
what I
just
meant.
don't like the word.
Because a lot of people would not like to call themselves this or that. And like I said in chat lately, I like phenomenology. I do like it. I think it's very powerful.
Well, as a conceptual framework, it just yields answers to a degree. You ask a questions and it says, "Oh yeah, how about this? How about that?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like the only other language that does that I've seen is mathematics. If you draw a triangle, you can ask it a couple of questions, and it'll tell you a couple of answers.
You're talking about phenomenology?
Yeah, the model specifically, not just random, but presented in a specific way. It's not just a matter of making stuff up. It's more like if you have this premise and you answer this question, you get a arrive at answers.
premise being modeled,
Right.
question being programmed. Something like that.
Well, for example, what are objects versus what are types and subjects? Right, and why are they necessary? What's the fucking point of all of that? Well,
Mm-hmm.
if you layer things this way, that
It's
way, this way.
It's how your mind is able to summarize so much complexity of an environment into like manageable chunks of category.
Yeah, chunking is another classical term.
Classic.
It's a jet term.
Yep. So you were before break. You were mentioning like the term themselves, zeitgeist and soul, and self, like or not. Well, and then you mentioned we wanted to get in self and self-reference, which.
Oh yeah. So with the whole, so we're digging deeper. Zeitgeist being like whole society, soul being an individual person with the same quality, and then the self on which the ego is riding. Right. So okay, we're missing a step here. Soul, ego, self, self-reference. Right. Zeitgeist, soul, ego, self, self-reference.
Because we're talking about a quantified machine.
At the top. And we're drilling down the layers.
Right.
So, okay. Let's back up. Zeitgeist and soul are the quality of lack. That quality of lack is the result of ego operating within the self. And the self is the expression of self-reference within narrative. So it's the default mode of operation presented on a higher level so that the organism can contextualize its own self within its own environment. It's already self-referential. It just carries that to the next level of
making an actual
yourself.
Story which involves our container of
Correct.
the body.
That's
me.
all I'm talking about. It's not complicated. Correct. It's just a lot.
It's very simple. So simple.
So yeah, that's the whole picture, really. You have a self-referential structure. That self-referential structure creates narratives about self. On top of that self-narrative, there is a transactional narrative. That transactional narrative takes over the entire self-structure within the narrative. Because it's
quantifying.
Yeah, because it's transactional, it eschews qualification and latches onto quantification. verification. That's the reason for the said neglect to begin with. That neglect has another qualitative feeling, if you will. That's what we are referring to as soul. It's the feeling of lack, the thing that needs to be saved, hence the connotations.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
overall, that whole picture brought together for the full population, this feeling of lack is the zeitgeist that causes individuals to go on their bewilderment or search journeys.
right, and interestingly, if I reading this correctly, the soul includes basically all of our um, social system structures, governance, state, everything.
And their associated repression. No, that's the ego. The ego is the technical mechanism. The soul is the qualitative fingerprint left behind it. Because of its as long as ego is operating, there's a qualitative essence within the self-narrative that I'm calling soul. This neglected aspect of the self.
But that's qualitatively felt.
Qualitatively felt. And the more totalized the ego, the more totalizing the ego is, the more of that quality is present. It's like a reverse relationship, basically. The bigger the ego, the bigger the soul. To say.
Right. Yeah. So it's not that all these structures are in the soul necessarily, but there's a reflection in the soul of the damage done.
Yeah. Specifically the damage. Right. It's the negative space.
Yeah.
It's not the positive space where you put objects in. It's the negative space left from taking objects away.
Yeah. That you feel and have to deal with.
It's objects, I mean qualities. I'm not talking about quantitative stuff. It's just hard to use language for quality without talking in terms of big or small.
It's okay. We're beyond that. Yeah, we figured it out.
Just for the audience.
You just have to believe.
No. That's the other thing. You don't need belief for any of this.
For the descriptions, no.
If the qualitative aspects are experienced within the moment, as they are being said to,
yeah, I know you're right.
Then your verification is right there in front of you in that moment. There's no need to convince. There's no need to believe. It's either is it happening? Like just if no, then fine. I'll accept that. But my experience says otherwise. So, and on top of that, I don't seem to be the only one with this experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're railing on blind faith, which the word belief could be just taken as like.
Well, yeah, that's why I don't use it.
It's a bad.
I use
bad
faith.
word.
I use faith, but in very, very, very narrow context.
Yep, we didn't get into that. We don't need to, but I'm reminded of things that I haven't quite documented on ClickUp. Our organizational methods.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like building a rapport.
Yep, faith, rapport. There was another one. There's two more, of course.
And the whole thing is truth. If you look up truth, you should see it in our glossary.
Well,
May as well.
May as well. Why don't we wander through this for just?
It's gonna take too much time.
Just for a sec. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm gonna find the thing.
I'm not doing it.
Glossary. So, to my mind, glossary would be something that would be academic. So we've got a folder.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've got a folder for that. We've got a dev task or a list. Then you go into an actual task or whatever. At the bottom is going to be.
Yes, we use this and this kind of stuff for coding too.
what do you call it? A
Just search.
file. This is just a snapshot.
Yeah, that's fine. Just search. Truth.
My computer's very slow. I don't know if didn't Control F. It's not usually work. I don't really know how this
There.
works
You just passed it.
too well, but
You just passed it.
oh damn. Rapport, trust, respect, and faith.
So you start off with faith, as in you're willing to suspend your disbelief. Remember?
Yeah.
Faith is like you're suspending your disbelief for the moment, just to allow their soundbite to reflect causality within your own dream.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what you're allowed to do. That's what faith is here. It's a very technical, meant to be technically
You're
taken
allowing the billiard balls to collide.
to see what happens.
Yeah.
Suspending your own interactive.
And of course, if you're interacting with an enemy, you don't want to let things in to let that billiard system collide. If you feel
Yeah,
someone is your enemy,
enemy
right?
implies
In other
lack-
words, hostility. You don't want.
enemy implies there's no faith already.
Right.
So faith is
With hostility, that
so
would be shut off.
faith is the moment is allowing the soundbite to have causative effect in the moment without your input. You're not shaping the moment. You're letting the soundbite shape the moment and see what happens. And you're suspending.
And that's really
yourself,
something that should be
observing.
guarded. It's not.
Very.
It's not a.
Very. This is.
Shouldn't be a surprise that people
don't do
will
it.
not just start listening to anybody who walks up and talks to them,
So
and feeling like that's
this
could
does
be
not
real.
imply you should do that.
Yeah.
This doesn't. If you look at combine this, but also with focus. And what do we have in focus?
Yeah.
First and foremost. What's the first area of concern of focus?
Focus. It's not education.
It's hygiene.
That triad.
Yes. So hygiene.
Hygiene,
So
sustenance.
The very first thing is hygiene, right?
Maintenance.
So you're already
fitness.
your first area of concern is taking shit out, not grabbing shit in, which is second. It's kicking the garbage out. So what were we talking about? We were talking about faith.
Keeping bad things out.
So combine faith and hygiene together. You were talking about being guarded.
Yeah.
So immunity is already stepping up in guards. Right from the get-go.
That's where it should be.
It says, no. I'm not letting anything in. First, I'm taking all the garbage out.
So naturally...
So by the time you're even doing nutrition, which is what faith is a counterpoint to.
You've already gone over that, okay, this is a friend, not an enemy.
Mm-hmm. You've allowed them through the membrane. You've already ingested it.
Yeah. Like any interaction of life. Right, there is, trust.
So, and the reason it's called faith rather than just immediate trust, like you're saying, is because you don't have the verifiability point. Right? The soundbite has been spoken and allowed in, but it hasn't been verified for its effect. So if it's terrible, it could be thrown back out. But then, if it's not terrible, a respect can be earned.
Great.
Right? So that's the step. Like, if you don't get past, faith, fine. But now, do you get the respect out of that to build the next causative layer, which is trust? Because now you didn't just allow the soundbite to go in. The soundbite had causal effects. Those causal effects were verified, right? And so soundbite matches outcome. That's a trust-building situation, right? And over and over and over, you get what's called rapport. So if trust is never broken, the rapport builds up. And then there's going to be less reason to need faith to support the whole structure, even though it's going to still underpin the whole
Sure.
thing.
Sure, of course.
Because you never, like, you can't predict the thing that's never happened before, right? Like, we're not talking about like being what do you call it, omni knowledgeable, knowing all futures, paths, and all that kind of stuff. We're talking
I'm thinking
about
about charlatans, and it feels like
they exploit this.
anything that any, let's say, call master could do or say, a charlatan can mimic that, right?
Right.
So there's always
that's
this
the
thing of stuff.
exploitation of that.
And
But
one
built,
could be going through the system and find it like a strong rapport is built, where it ended up being in a bubble of existence, if you will, like
yeah.
not totalizing.
So notice that this whole structure has to be rebuilt upon and rebuilt upon. So you still have faith in the underlying thing, right? You're still building the respect. You're still building the trust, and you're still always building the rapport. It's a never-ending thing. So truth in this sense is active.
Yeah,
it's not. It's not like a sentiment.
Once again, this is another sort of.
So this is an activity. It's rather all of this is verbs. They're not like. Once you've gone, once you're at the truth, you're done.
That's a recurring theme, that this idea of a rapport as a long extended, perfective type of thing existing. No, we're talking in the moment. Basically, it comes down to in the moment. These things can be observed to be happening. That's what the purpose of the model is.
Rapport, as is here, is fundamentally allowing you to get through the faith and respect steps quicker by not stalling for prove it, right? Because you've already have that rapport, you've proved it so many times,
Sure,
right? You've earned that trust so many times before. Faith is easier to accept.
right. But in any case,
but it's not. It's never like
in any case,
blindly.
Rapport is not something that becomes perfected and then boom, you start not observing.
It's a constant activity.
It's not. Yeah, that's I think the main distinction between charlatanism would ideally come up to this point of, wow, we've proven so much you're a guru, and then never question again.
Like this should be another kind of meditation for each individual person to like simply go through their faith, respect, trust, and rapport categories for like the context that they're in. So like, say me and you, like personally.
Dashboard software.
Like my faith in you, my trust in you, your rapport with me. Just like considering all of these things, right? Same with myself. Like meditate on those aspects of myself. Mm-hmm. Do I have faith in what I tell myself? Do I have respect for myself? Do I trust myself? So like it's another way of constantly reinforcing a thought pattern without being taken for a ride by the top part of that idea that would be missing all of the bottom parts and not connecting back to the roots of the entire process.
It's a runaway process, not grounded.
Yeah. So as a meditation, what I'm saying basically is that, cool, you could like think this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true, right? But the meditation is asking you to basically like, what was the soundbite that I accepted without pushing my own bias to allow me to believe what I believe about that? What made me respect that soundbite so that it got integrated into my psychological makeup? What was it that made that soundbite respectable to me? Like it's a meditation you can go talk yourself through, right? And then how did that build my trust? Like why? What is the components of what I'm trusting? Like, you know, like how did that all get built up from within, from the core, from the first faithful acceptance of the soundbite? and you can cycle through all of that, and if you do that, your mindset
It's
will
like,
be to always dip down to the core assumptions and to flush out biases before they affect the final outcome. The better, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. The better you get at it, the more you're inclined to do it.
right? This is a immunity.
Exactly.
Fleshing out biases that are counter to your own life existence isomorphism, like your central things that are not coherent with that.
Yep. All that. So it's actually a nice little tangent that we went on this because it also speaks to the whole zeitgeist idea. You come up to somebody and talk about the zeitgeist the way we're talking about the zeitgeist. First of all, faith. Does that person have any faith? The way we qualified it,
Yeah,
the way we qualified it.
like preaching.
That
If we
person-
want to preach,
Does that person are they like they're going to take their dream, their moment to moment dream, put it to the side, accept this soundbite within their moment, and let that soundbite get processed without adding back
yeah,
your own biases. Like, do you even have that? If you don't have that, conversation isn't really.
this is like the primary object of advertisement, I guess, to hit into that.
To sleaze into.
Yeah,
Because the benefit isn't for you
nice
at the end.
qualification.
It's like this is what I was saying. The charlatan exploits exactly this path. They try to get past the faith, past the respect, all the way into trust and rapport before doing any of the underlying work. They basically jump into rapport on sale one. A promotion, for example. It feeds into that. Look, I did something really nice for you. Don't you love us now?
Yep.
You want to give us more money now?
Slicks hair back.
How about now? How about this thing? You want to buy it? 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 We sold you some good stuff before.
You're pretty convincing.
I know. I work for a company that does exactly this.
Do you accept tap?
Yes. Please tap.
Tap.
Okay, I'm not going to say it. It's a little bit.
No, it's.
My sense of humor.
I thought when I said that, I thought to that, but
no, I'll take it to just the same route.
Better just to not.
Yep. Anyway.
Lower. Yeah. Sweet.
In Israel, there's a word for ATM called kaspomat. Kesef being the word for money. Kaspomat, automated. Anyway.
Money, honey.
And those people that usually they're in the trades and their belt is often a little bit loose-ish. And then when they do
the classic, yes. That's where you swipe, I know.
Exactly. So you would call that kaspomat. Because your first instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, something about lower.
Yep. There are scenes like that as well for other areas. So, yeah, we've got this setup. We've got some shit going on.
Oh shit! I forgot the most important part of my tangent.
What? Which is
the zeitgeist. Because we started our conversation about you can't even approach a person without them accepting the premise at least or whatever. And this is kind of hones in on the reason as to why that would be the case and how to approach it and structure it and move it forward without landing in the charlatanism boat. what I didn't expect from this tangent is to think of it as a meditation. That's actually a new idea, but it makes sense if you think about it as to how somebody could be immune to charlatanism is by approaching faith, truth from not a quantitative standpoint, but from a qualitative one. Is rapport still a quality? Is trust still a quality? Is there respect as a quality? And it goes both ways. They respect me, I respect them. And also, the whole thing can go both ways. As soon as you apply faith, and faith is applied back, you have an isomorphism, you have resonance, you have all of those good qualities that you would want to build into a truth. And when you don't, you can see the dysmorphisms almost immediately. So it's an all-around useful tool to look at it this way.
Immunity is basically the ability to, or the ability to qualify what's in front of you, what's being presented.
Right.
To filter through quality.
Right. And because you're saying that, I'm going to add, those qualities aren't going to come from your narrative. That's
above. That's from
besides
above.
the point. It's going to come from your affect.
From below.
It's going to be your pleasure, your pain, and how those transform into narratological hates and attachments.
Right. Yeah, because we wanted to set up the pipeline from zeitgeist to
and what's universal about the zeitgeist is that it comes through as pain.
What was the other end? I think it was just like dawn of civilization.
Check this out. But no matter what the narratological standpoint is, and how wonderful quantitatively
zeitgeist is pain.
Zeitgeist comes across through the entire affective system as a pain, no matter what. So there's no. The only way you can.
There's no blocking it or anything. There's human structure have needs, and when a structure is out of joint with that, you feel it. Period.
So the only recourse that this system has is to pretend that this pain is actually pleasure, like in a masochistic kind of way. To paint the pain as pleasure.
How you can recuperate into your identity of that. This is part of it.
It's like taking advantage of the fact that when you work out and you feel the burn, and the burn is painful, but you're motivated by it because you're going to feel great afterwards. It's taking that kind of concept and running it all the way through, except never giving you the point in time where you actually benefit from the burn. You just burn and burn and burn and burn and burn, always promised a better tomorrow, and then you die, and then the next person goes through the same thing.
Yep, I gapped out for like half that, but the conclusion is on point. All these myths of the system are just that, can collapse at any moment. It's things we collectively believe in that keep us going to cope, basically cope with the soul.
I made a metaphor with exercise and how charlatanism takes advantage of this. When you work out, you feel pain, the burn from the muscles. Just a simple correlation that people can understand.
Sure.
That pain is mentally can be tedious, but for other people that are really into training, for example, that pain is a motivator. Like, I'm sweating today, that sweat is my strength tomorrow.
Potentially, all it takes is for a structure in your psyche in which you believe that pain is gain. They're connected together intrinsically. So this pain right now means that why I'm so big already because of the pain before, whatever.
So
it's seen as a good thing.
So what happens if you accept that as normal? Pain is gain. but take away the gain and keep the pain. That's how I see our general overarching social structure working. There's a carrot in front of a stick as a promise for our reward, but that promise always keeps going forward and forward and forward and forward and
Well,
forward.
it's
and
politically
forward.
managed.
So that pain is being used.
It's politically managed. Whatever the people could accept, give them the minimum sort of thing in these negotiations. Like there's just like with healthcare and like retirements, like governments are going to have to be like, okay, look, you're not retiring at this. We have to put the age limit later and later and later. All this kind of stuff. Like it just flows that way. It's management through.
And that's the
political.
zeitgeist that we're talking about. That's
Yeah,
actually
keep feeling
experienced.
Yeah.
That's the experienced aspect. So, okay. Yeah.
I think it's a great premise because this is where it's a broad way of describing where the energy of people is, and it's energy economy. Sumi likes to talk about that, and I think I don't fully understand, but when we were talking about like the polyglot line relay and all that, just the translation, like having a model which translates between layer, like having medium. This is a holistic like energy model to me. When you don't separate at any point, you go top to bottom. Like you don't. There's no disconnect. There's no hard problem, right? That to me is what an energy model is.
Right. And we hopefully captured that with what I call the car diagram. That's like that is
well, plus things like this, even the Quine relay, and then on top of that, like an identity matrix.
So imagine the car diagram with like its two stacks here. The Quine relay is like that line, the medium line with the arrows pointing back and forth between each other. That's like it's sitting there flat.
It's what enables these two different parts stacks of the car to even acknowledge that the other exists as an entity to be interacted with, which is why you're sending a signal.
And the resonance happens here because there are words and sentences and whatever, but the actual transference of energy happens at the bottom where the molecules of air are moving.
It's heart resonant up and down, right?
Well, download, transfer, upload. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the
you just
top
said
layers,
the word actual, so I just jumped on it.
Well, significant and fundamental.
Correct.
So not actual, but fundamental.
That's what.
The kicker though is that the top layers that are at play, they don't give a flying fuck about this medium. To them,
they don't have to. They don't have to.
It's a chunked.
This is why
prepackaged layers for them.
You would say like not agencies, but actors, whatever. You and I have a coherence ability of coherence to potentially take into account those things, right?
So
it's up to what the skill level is.
And here's why I love the word resonance, because like when you take a guitar, like especially an acoustic guitar, and you pluck, I guess it would be the E string.
Grab that one.
It doesn't matter which string as long as there is another resonance string with it, right? I forget my theory at this point for music. But pluck a string, and without touching another string, hopefully another one will resonate.
The only one that should resonate
is E.
So I should be able to like just barely touch it and maybe.
But you know what I'm talking about. You see one string vibrate. You see one string vibrate, and without touching, right, another string will start to also move at the same frequency.
Yes.
Right. So if you picture the stacks in the car diagram, you have a similar effect. If you pluck the top of the one stack, right, if the frequency is correct, quote unquote, metaphorically speaking, the other one starts to resonate. That's what I mean by a resonance wave. So something traveled through the actual medium, through the download and the upload translators, to the point of where these things have started to vibrate at the same frequencies.
I would like to look at like the OSI model for just the basic metaphor of this exact thing. Like having a physical internet cable right now from my laptop is going out there, right?
Yeah.
There's the router down there speaks the same stack in some regards as this computer. So like it's ending up being over a cable, not this cable, that cable, which is having on different pins either at this voltage state or this voltage state. I don't know if it's half a volt or zero.
It's all broken down to the voltage.
Half volts and 0 volts, and then over time you do per second. How many seconds is divided 1,000 times or something? 1,000,000 times probably for data. It's half, it's 0, it's half, 0, 0, half 0, right? Putting a
code over time,
which reflects that I just clicked on a website or something, right?
Right.
And now the cable's going crazy.
And what the fuck does a click of a mouse have to do with anything that happens on the wire? Exactly. Well, it has no concept of it. And it's exactly the same thing, yes. It's literally the same way of looking at stacking. The difference being is that the complex adaptive stacking will recurse indefinitely. So as soon as you have a resonance wave happening through one layer, that becomes another medium.
You're talking about
for another resonance wave
through the neurochemical operating system. You're talking through matter, or
in general, the complex adaptive system in general.
It's an ongoing and ever-ending loop of feedback and motion.
As soon as you have a layer,
it's energy sloshing like waves hitting the rocks.
Hold on. What I'm saying is this. You have a layer, you have two stacks happening, those two stacks resonate. That resonance is now its own layer, so the whole thing can like be squished upwards. You see what I'm saying? So you can ignore the bottom. Ignore being a very loose term here.
Yes, that's why it's a medium, because it now becomes a regular known thing to be played in. Yes. So you can have further mediums come out of that.
So for example, like, yeah, we are using the neurochemical operating system to physically move my fingers using electricity right now, but my thought processes aren't about molecules or atoms or
you don't have to worry about
or any of that stuff. They're about moving, expanding, contracting.
Correct.
It's very large scale, chunked sort of notions.
This is why we have the idea of significance. More significant is a higher layer. It kind of has a totalizing effect. Every layer has a totalizing effect over the below.
Right.
Because every layer has full control in some ways to just destroy the shit out of everything.
Here's another example. The time it takes from a thought to progress from your mind to your mouth and be spoken out.
It went through meat.
It went through meat, but it's like so quick.
It went through meat. Yes.
It did, but the point is that like it was so quick that there was no I don't think
very fast.
Thought about any steps in between.
No, we're pretty quick.
Like do you think about how to move your tongue?
We're not ants. Right. You're right. It's all summarized.
So even that doesn't happen.
You're pointing to an ordered sort of structure
pushing down,
which higher concepts have access to and don't need to worry about
the implementation. Yeah,
it's all set to go.
And we have a similar abstraction mechanism in programming where you write a function, right? And the function is like a singular name with a couple of maybe parameters to go along with it to change its behavior on the fly for this situation and that situation. Mm-hmm. But an entire chunk of code, line after line after line after line after line, very, very nuanced descriptors of what exactly the machine is supposed to be doing, hidden all the way behind one single abstract name that just says, do X. And because X means something to you, you already know what the algorithm is going to be.
Yeah.
So this
Right.
way of hiding
Yeah.
detail behind simple
A label.
nomenclature.
It's the idea of a label.
And that's how you rise in the layers.
This hasn't come up in a while, but that like prime symbol for a concept. I remember it was in a chart a long time ago. Just the idea of having a prime symbol for different concepts or ideas.
So it's a mimetic thing. In the memeplex, we have
right, foreground and background. Foreground representing the background.
Yes.
Foreground as a label.
Positive and negative space. So within a single momentary image, you're going to have your positive space. Another metaphor is vision. When you're looking at something, you have one tiny dot where everything is clear.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
And everything is called peripheral.
Yep.
It's the same idea.
It's necessary because things can only be described, well, in the holonic modeling, in terms of like aspects, I guess, not aspects, but you know what I mean, from different perspectives, different points.
It's like having an object of a sentence. So a sentence consists of the subject, the object, and whatever is happening between the two.
It's like label and content.
So it's the same picture. It's like your background, your foreground. The foreground happens in the background. So there's your actor, but then there's the stage. Right? And maybe the light shifts from this actor to that actor, but now there's but then it's like your eye moved from one object to the next object. Now this is in the peripheral part of the stage.
Right.
And the focus is just on this part of the whole thing. So there's always like a point of it's like the main meme. So the memeplex being like
the main meme must include a self-reference to it.
It is.
Right. Like that's what defines the main meme, I think, is the self-reference embedded in that.
So that's where you get I am this, I am not this. So you have your main meme, and the self-reference comes through as either identifying
and
with, not identifying.
These are in layers, right? I'd assume you would break them down to layers.
Well, this is the self-reference doing its thing. So you have the thing, and because it's like, well, I am that thing. Because the representation is within that thing, so I am that thing. So I'm already self-referencing. The only question I have is like, what was my proximity to the thing in the abstract versus the rest of my story? Like if the rest of my story says I am never that thing, whenever that thing comes up, it's internally already identified within you, but then rejected as other. And the narratological constructs feed into I am not that.
It's kind of a bias. Well, everything, it's all biases, I guess.
Well, that's like the narrative. That's what narrative does. Narrative contextualizes every abstraction that intersects asynchronously and gives it like a synchronous sort of place within the program, within the story. So things come at you at any given time, but the way your story formulates is like this belongs here, this belongs there, this belongs there, and that's the sequence in which I will actually approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same idea with having the stage, which is like a whole bunch of different things all at once, but the focus is being on one actor, then another, then another, then another. So there's a selective process going on within that asynchronous.
I was just thinking like how jarring it is for most people out in the world, let's say, to encounter such like narratives about like firmly describing inner experience and like talking about that. Like even approaching it, I feel like a lot of that is lost to bewilderment.
Well, I think the alienation is so strong that these stories, despite them being the least alien, their formula is the most alien, because the language in which they are spoken has no foundation from which to draw upon to give them any like significance. It's pretty sad, actually. if you think about it, all of this is just sad. There's not even a reason to get angry over anything. It's just like
Oh no,
you
I
can just
get
sit
that. Yeah,
down and like fucking like, what have we done?
yeah.
Just-
It's mind-boggling, but not bewildering.
No, because this is the search. This isn't the will. Bewilderment would have been Joe Rogan.
It's only mind-boggling. Anyways, we'll take a
It's not even
short break.
mind-boggling. It's almost like
Well, if you have language, it's obvious. It feels good
the
to.
mind-boggling part is that nobody wants to speak the language,
No, they do.
but at the same time whining in their own language about what that second language could actually
It's just.
progress through.
It's a small speed bump. A very small.
Small, but it's like you're hitting it at light speed, and
Yeah.
it deflects you like way the fuck off
And
course.
I appreciate that for all involved.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't get it.
Well, we went through the truth stack, and one of the things that I've mentioned is that this is where
Combining that with the shitstorm, what is? I forget. Like define it.
shitstorm is your dream surrounding the moment.
Yep.
With the cyclone being anxiety and regret, touching the past and the present, cycling over and over and over and over, keeping one in neurosis and psychosis.
Right.
Speeding up like
That was a good one, man. I like that. I enjoyed that.
So The stack of truth.
When you combine that or with the truth stack,
So,
right?
so I want you to think about charlatanism, the way the system is hijacking the ego, the shitstorm that's happening in your mind, alongside with the stack of truth, like faith, respect, trust, rapport, how they fucked that up. Like think about faith, regret, and anxiety. Think about respect, regret, and anxiety. Like just combine them and try to up the ant. Like combine more and more and more with the fuckery that you get. And tell me if you're not seeing the world at operation.
Sure, yeah. It's like the mechanism, the charlatanism to set up all of these anxiety paths. The charlatan connect, roping in and latching in into the same things that people try to escape from, the same cycles. But all the solutions out there presented.
Think about how it undermines the model, how it removes the ability to even use the model over time. And the more it spreads, the harder it becomes. The harder
because
the
you get
blocking.
biased against people who are presenting something as going to make you feel better.
Anything to do with truth, everything that builds rapport, everything that has to do with trust, you cannot actually utilize. It's always anxious about should I have, should I not have. It's always being regretful about the times that you shouldn't have and the times that you should have and did. The entire stack is fucked for us.
Right. Yep.
And that's why faith is like this blind thing, and truth is like this thing people are chasing, and rapport just doesn't exist for anything because it just betrays everything. Like almighty dollar,
right,
is the only thing that survives all of it.
Right. Well, everyone has heard stories or know somebody who can't trust certain types of people anymore, right? Like that's the same thing. Even the idea of having of trying to gain trust, trying to gain your trust, become suspicious of that because
I was going to say it already makes you suspicious.
What they try to do.
For why are you trying? Yeah.
Holy shit. That's like a counter immunity, potentially. It would feel like a counter immunity.
It's an autoimmune disease.
Right.
It's when the immunity system is just turned on itself because it's like the structure of itself is betraying the immunity system to begin with, and it becomes like its own enemy.
Autoimmune disease.
Well, if you start to think about what they are literally your immune system attacking a portion of your body.
So this explains why people fight for the Matrix, quote unquote. You could
cipher.
You could sum it up as an autoimmune disease.
Right, because his brain is telling me that steak is delicious.
Yep.
Telling him, I guess.
Yeah.
And there is a truth to it, because if you do wake up, you're in fucking dystopian nightmare, eating slop.
Yeah, that's...
nobody wants that either.
I feel like that's a problem that hopefully would get solved by many people having the same
That's the threshold.
same sorts of ideas, because if you're alone, that's when it feels like eating slop because there's nothing to know. You might as well be homeless on the street.
Right. And I've been mentioning that the only way that this passes a line of any kind of more significance into an individual on an individual level is like what you're saying. There are enough of those kinds of individuals that took it upon themselves to begin with, or convinced themselves of this to start the project, and then passing another threshold of at least meeting each other. So there's
Right.
like a few stepping stones before the like,
One too many.
right, which is why I've always called it a tall order, and I've never said it's anything but dead on arrival.
There's so many reasons to call it a tall order.
Just 1 second.
And we'll and we back.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting tangent to think about. The I guess it's like you see this kind of rhetoric and all the way back in Buddhism too. The the basic way that used to be described is that yes, the Dharma or Dhamma is the teaching, as it were, is super clear to anybody who's realized what the fuck it's being talked about to begin with. But it's very difficult to actually arrive to that point. And because of that, most people are actually not going to necessarily succeed. It's a very tough proposition.
Yeah, I
On
think
top of
because it's
that,
a leap of
gotten
intuition.
tougher.
I think.
It gotten even tougher since then. Because we're, at the very least back then, you weren't as bombarded with external thoughts from other people.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
had your close proximity group, but
You weren't
to
on
hear,
social media getting
Yeah.
shorts from YouTube
exactly, like
in a comatose state.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was it tough to begin with, all the way back then, it's only gotten tougher. And the only saving grace, I suppose, is that the qualitative elements, due to them being as universal as they back then, just never shifted. And so the same pressing issues come up again and again and again. Even though
yeah.
they're tougher to resolve now than they ever were before.
That's the theory of the zeitgeist. So the zeitgeist had an origin point where the soul began construction. This was at the dawn of civilization. That's why we spent probably most of the discussions sorting that out.
Mhm.
I'll just pause it for a sec. All right, we spent a lot of time trying to sort out like the root cause and like where did it all start, trying to line up a pseudo history.
Yeah, so
Right.
to summarize that, we had a gift economy like as an origin story. Um, the fields cleared off, the ice age cleared the fields. There was a feast economy built on top of that that took advantage of said fields.
Yep.
Time progressed and some vital, I suppose, knowledge disappeared with that time. The economy started to progressively be more and more tied to
To accounting.
to the agricultural work of the fields, which in
Sure, like a wealth coming out of this this area of productivity.
Which in turn kickstarted accounting being as a primary method of
accounting
sorting everything.
Was there for the field.
And then once that took over to be the totalizing system, you have what we call civilization. So a couple other things have to happen.
We have the market.
Yeah, but for example, settlements were needed to have like that salt mine situation. So there's a few
I was going to say that before.
There's a few details that
you also needed a nice grasslands to have grain to make your beer.
And you needed
your alcohol.
And you needed salt for preservation.
There had to be salt nearby. And preservation, like meat, dehydrated meat, it was like a currency practically.
So not at first. At first, the salt was attempted to be the main
meat
currency.
As a product, as an edible, demandable product, yes.
So civilization.
Salt is abstract.
So
what is anybody going to do with that?
Hold on.
Everybody needs meat. That's the key. The market for meat.
That was an actual development, though, which is what I'm hinting at. So you have like the start of civilization where before they trade with dehydrated meat and all that, they tried to initially they tried to trade the salt itself, but it's heavy, it's bulky, it's incredibly.
That couldn't have taken long to figure out. Like,
it was the Egyptians that started it. They're like it was so unique in that it got recorded as like there's a single outpour of that.
I could see salt as being a big economic industrious
traded,
like not traded but pushed out by a network of like some type of power.
So salt was valuable because of its capacity to preserve meat, right? So that's the initial thought. But then it was noticed that you can just preserve the food locally and export that
for a much higher price.
Not only that, but who doesn't eat food?
Everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and from that, like the entire market, like actual market started. So there was like an elite market where it was just like kings playing with gold.
So what we're describing
and then eventually
here,
it trickled down to everything.
We spent so much time describing these beginning times. We're talking about feast economy, which is an intermediary between the gift economy and the market economy.
Right.
Feast economy at its very end ends up having very market-like things like trading meat on a mass scale. Like it's almost becomes a currency. But then, actually, I think currency
that comes later.
Currency is coming in at some point, and that's what steps. That's what enables the market.
So the grain, we equated it to pseudocurrency. So as soon as you have the gift,
right,
the feast
but same
economy,
with meat. Meat is a pseudocurrency.
You already have a pseudocurrency happening. Cured meats are not yet making it through the market like other objects are yet at this point. So the ingredients to preserve meat are making it through the market, but nobody's thought to preserve and then send that out yet. So there's still like a I'm not saying
and this is all barter. Like we're not usually calling it market yet.
Right, because
barter, which is happening.
So when I say pseudocurrencies, that you do have an object that can be utilized as currency and sometimes is, but isn't. That's not like 100% of its
generally role. Everybody either wants it or knows somebody who wants it. That's what makes it like a currency.
But then you can also eat it. That's not a currency.
It's not. No.
So you have like this middle way sort of object that behaves sometimes as and sometimes not as.
It's barter stuff.
Well, that encourages the barter, but the barter isn't efficient. So that system is like, okay, let's get that currency thing working for us actually.
Right. So who is big enough, strong enough, have resource to start minting like coins or something?
And
like that becomes technology.
It starts with shiny pebbles, and then
I don't think a lot of that lasted a long time, like seashells and all that. Probably not. It's got to be. It's probably metal, stamped metal. I don't
the
know.
harder it goes towards the harder it is to get, the more valuable it is. And the reason for that is because then most people don't have it.
Well, gold.
That's right.
Um,
Then most people don't have it, and
gold.
therefore
Yeah,
currency is in the hands of a few.
gold is self-evident. You don't even have to stamp it. But a lot of these structures ended
Gold
up
wasn't valuable the first few millennia.
not in certain places. No, not
No,
like
iron
that.
was way more valuable. It was tougher. You could do more shit with it.
Well,
Like,
that must be in a system where fiat currency is being utilized, so gold can go to the side. Has to be, because gold is the ultimate currency
okay,
of Earth
so
historically.
balance the set with um, balance this out. Like, yes, you can hoard gold, but then how inactive do you have to be to just collect gold? And the earlier you go, the less inactive you can be and survive. So the hoarding portion would have been pushed to the back more. But the less you have
Well,
to do, the more a hoarding you can do.
you have corporation groups of people together.
Yeah, well, eventually, yes.
The lower ranks are the ones doing the stuff, and the other ones can sit.
Yeah, but balance this out again with why would anybody listen to you, and what the fuck does your shiny metal actually do for me? So there's
Yeah,
another
right.
there's another few phases to get through
Yep.
to eliminate
There is a
resistance.
sort of like faith in certain things, like
Oh,
gold.
where you uproot the entire thing and make the truth the truth of the entire civilization, perhaps, where the first religions come up that justify the disparity. It's all connected. It's all very connected. You're talking about how this gets uprooted through time, where nobody does the faith thing and respect thing anymore. You're expected to trust, and the report is written.
Mm-hmm. It's
That's
signed.
That's how you believe the Bible,
Right.
right? The report is written for you. You have to believe it. It's true.
Well, that's not the way to believe the Bible, but
No,
a contract.
That's how like a lot of people
To
tell
believe
you.
a contract.
That's how a lot of people tell you to believe the
Yes,
Bible.
correct. Les pods. We back. Alright. It's getting darker out, but lighter. It's not even that bad. We can try turn on. We can try turn lighter if you want. Without getting epilepsy. It's that one. This one's red. I said it was a different color. But it is like a nice fryer, like a fry station red. It's almost an orange. Pardon, don't mind me.
How does that?
Is it brighter? If you tip it over, it has a. It just makes that noise.
Nice.
Like anti-tip sensing. It cuts off the coil.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Just if you knock it over, it's not gonna like
Burn your house down.
burn the shit. Yeah.
That's a good
Yes.
idea.
Good noise. Good noise.
Wouldn't let you fall asleep either.
It'd be making noise right up until its death. It's fiery death.
So,
Assuming no one came along.
so interesting how we went full circle back and all the way back into charlatanism yet again.
Full circles are good. Yeah, even the start of our book discussion. It all comes back, doesn't it?
And it's again sad to like almost end it on that kind of note where you're like,
Because we got about another hour, let's call it.
yeah, but what we're talking about is like the most crucial aspect of talking about the model with anybody is exactly the same spot in which all exploitation by the system via ego occurs.
And has
So it's like
crusted over with a shell
of absolute distrust. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a weird position to be in.
To hinge at that point. That's a good way of looking at it. A hinge point where
To gain any trust in the model, you have to present the model, but to present the model, you have to gain trust in the model. So
it's like
a chicken and
a
an egg
major
situation.
problem point, if you will.
It's a chicken and an egg.
Yeah, one of those.
And so it comes back to like, do you actually agree with the zeitgeist? Do you feel the qualitative aspects of what we call soul? Do you understand the hijacking of the ego of the self and all of that stuff?
Like Jehovah Witness or whatever, or like different Christian groups or like who knock on your door.
They're arguably not necessarily Christian.
Well,
I'm in the boat of like they're kind of different.
Hey, any church can send people out.
No, yeah, they're all churches. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's hard to say like even who we're talking about, right? But this or that, yeah. If you want to like dice theology and all that, I'm all about that.
Like,
but what if these people showing up at your door were actually fucking cool? We're like fucking amazing, cool people.
I've had positive experiences like that. Not at my door though. One time I was sitting on a bus, and this woman, girl, I don't know, like she's young. She was younger than me for sure. And she asked me like if I read the book or the good book or something
of Mormon,
something to that effect.
Mm.
So I just
probably obviously the Bible.
And I look at her and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm reading it right now. and she was actually genuinely curious as to why I answered the way I did,
and just like a connection happened.
Yeah, and then we talked, and then it wasn't like she was laying it on me at her face. She told me about her face, but she didn't lay it on me. She
Like
was
her
she was
myth,
more curious about like my responses than she was about.
because probably many people would never would have respond how you did. I presume.
It's one of those memories that kind of stand out.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And
She, she,
that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
like I told her I'm reading the Book of Life, and she's like, Book of Life? And then I looked around the bus, and I just suggested like
That this is a
that
book
this is like I'm reading this,
reading the life around you. Yeah.
and she's probably never heard anybody talk like that. So whatever.
Yeah. No. For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not impressed by myself in that moment. I just think it was a really interesting interaction, just because of its
Right.
peculiarities.
Those moments, and if people have like a good intention,
Yeah,
an open heart, then just
and that was
and presence. A presence is what
that was what was so
had to
nice
be
to
there.
see. It wasn't that moment.
She adapted to you due to the presence. Like somehow she was present in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Which is not
and
often normal.
and it really like this is just my own quirk, but in a lot of moments like that, it kind of feels like the person that tried to preach to me got me preaching to them instead,
Yeah.
and they walked away.
You done just open a can.
And I don't know about you, but I secretly kind of really enjoy moments of that nature.
Yeah.
It's like, cool.
Hardly ever see that.
I'll take the little bits.
It was like a meeting of the minds in a way through the intentions, I guess.
The way she looked at me is like it was more like that idea of thinking that way was entirely a surprise.
Didn't expect that the
Yeah.
world. Yeah. So maybe she sunk into that idea, like the book, the Bible, the Word, God,
Maybe
the reality. It's all the same thing.
maybe I'd like to think that this is just totally me shooting the shit at this point. And this was like years ago, and my memory is probably like not as clear as
It's not
as I'm
crisp.
making it out
It's
to
fine.
be.
Yeah.
But like
It's a moment.
maybe that was like the first time that she's ever encountered a way of thinking that doesn't even line up with anything she's ever
You
like
found a
heard before.
Buddhist.
And
found a Buddhist.
it resonated with her because up until that
Curiosity,
up till that point the words weren't even there.
So she was actually portraying an admirable quality, I guess you would say, where
That's insane.
where you are for you faith is a given, as we were describing.
Yeah.
You are in the part where faith is already presumed. That means that you are in whatever you're encountering, you're in that world. That's the moment. That's where she was in that space, which allowed that to happen, right?
Yeah. I think
That
you know what?
you heard said something and she reacted deeply because that was open. The faith was already there. Amazing.
Yeah. And you know what? Framing it that way actually, yeah.
She was doing the right thing in her journey, whatever. Even like you find an organization, some people, you try to find a way,
I guess you
find
could say
answers.
that makes my impression of her journey more genuine. Like it earned my respect.
Right, recognizing, yeah, a deeper recognition of what's going on, I guess.
Because I'm not a stranger to giving weird answers, but I am a stranger to having those answers.
But you did focus on the fact that
Reciprocate.
she like was taken aback, surprised, as you said,
Yeah,
right?
to the point of where she actually inquired what the fuck I meant.
Yeah, she must.
Usually, if I say something weird and I'm not a stranger to it, what do people do?
She was expressing faith.
Yeah, no, I already caught that. I'm just saying
that's cool.
I'm impressed by that.
Wild.
Yeah,
Mhm.
especially back then.
And yeah, but just language to talk about things, speak about. I think it's very powerful and amazing that we maybe that's like kind of one of our main products. What do we call it? The model. You would say the model. I'm getting into ClickUp brain. I want to create a task. Create a task.
What's Larry doing these days? Just let's remember.
Mostly like, no, he was into like, what do they call it? Like full stack admin.
Oh,
IT, whatever. Like
admin.
yeah,
Full
like
stack
like
admin.
doing the
That doesn't
servers,
sound right.
like racks or whatever. I don't know what you call it.
Oh. The full stack means software stacks usually.
Yeah, I can't remember.
If you say full stack development, that's talking about front end to back end.
Yeah, it's probably more on the software side, I would guess, but
He was always an admin, right? Like a admin-ish sort of individual.
Yeah, I think
So he's
so.
probably
like just hanging out in the environments and all that.
So I would guess he's still probably just doing that. Maintaining a full stack sounds about right.
I don't know if he's still like he just did his own company for a long time. Like I think he does little things. He's just contracting.
I didn't know he had his own company.
But nowadays from what I like, we catch up every now and then. He's just traveling around. He's in Brazil like the other week. He's went to like Norway, I think, or like some Nordic.
Think he'd ever want to hang out again?
Helsinki or something.
Around these here parts? I wouldn't mind.
Probably. Yeah, he took a big turn. Remember, not from my perspective, big turn. It's like, because I remember like you and I were talking Buddhism like years and years ago, and like I tried talking to him about it, but he like kind of wasn't receptive.
Yeah, something about religion being not a thing to talk
Just this kind of stuff, but I don't know. This is like years later. It's like we're calling each other. We're on a call late at night, just like talking about meditation and like Buddhism and stuff. Like, and that was like a few calls we did there, and that was years and years ago. And now it's like bro's got like this is integrated like with this shit. Like he's onto it. Like he can talk any topic subject. Like he's into it.
Yeah, he always impressed me as a very
thoughtful, introspective.
Right. I always enjoyed his company like 100%. Immensely.
Oh, big time, yeah. But at the time, he didn't get that stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and we presented it differently too. Remember, we were on a
We've been through so many phases of like being rejected by just being so excited and like, hey, everyone, like, work with us.
That's autism. That's literally what this
kick.
That's
punch,
literally what autism
punch,
is.
beaten.
By the way, being excited over something so cool,
focused, but like
and then nobody fucking
and also not
being able to relate at all.
The trope being not having recognized or accommodated to the fact that people don't actually respond in kind. So things have to be presented in a more
but here's the deal, though.
Bite-sized manner.
Just imagine, like, no, don't imagine. Your experience of this. That is such a one-sided way of looking at shit. We adapt to their proclivities, the way they do things, with zero, fucking zero
reciprocation.
Exactly. So
typically, yeah. So it's like fit into the system. You're railing against what I just said. Kind of felt like fitting, just trying to fit into the system. Just do bite size. Don't like speak your joy or your immense like excitement.
Right.
Hold that in because you're part of the system.
Fuck, man. The very idea that people
because you'll be shamed.
Dude, remember the very idea of the fact that people try to shut down our conversations. You and me, we're having a great time having a conversation, but somebody else was not comfortable with the level of excitement that we were expressing about a subject, told us to fucking tone it down and not get into a fight with each other.
We have our own space.
It's like, fuck.
That's why, I guess.
And both you and me were like, we were having the best fucking time until you fucking showed up. Like,
Yep. quality. That's
How do you
quality.
how do you read smiles and fucking elevated depth of subject as hostility? Like what?
Well, that should be expected, I guess. Charlatanism, though, is
If we were
any
all
kind of
if we were like trying to over yell each other and it's being like, no, 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 this is right, you're
as
wrong.
if like we fought that hard. I don't
Right.
think so.
Exactly. Like
That never
that
existed.
never fucking showed up. So what were they responding to? Imagined fights?
I'm trying to remember that it does ring a bell, but I don't
Some
remember what
some
the fight
Christmas
was or
party.
something.
It was some Christmas party. Probably 10 years ago when I yelled at my mom for being so lenient with my sister. It was just basically
being herself or acting as
taking
normal,
the piss out of my mom's fucking.
abusing, psychological abuse. Yeah, stand up for it. Yeah, this moment of breaking from reality in which you're like, I don't give a fuck anymore, like what people think, right? Sometimes like you get like your identity kind of like shatters in a way that that who you were is done. Like I can't fucking do this anymore. There's reasons like it's too much pressure. Like
Other way around. Your identity keeps getting shattered and shattered and shattered, and you're just like, fuck this.
I'm not doing
Block whatever the fuck that is from making impact,
identities.
and just rebuild it right there on the spot. Reclaim absolutely every fucking aspect of it
Yeah.
as you can. Grab it.
Without accepting
And then just
anymore
like,
this
no.
pain cycle. Whatever doesn't involve that pain cycle, just pick up everything that's left over and move on.
So I would say it was more identity building, but the problem, of course, is that it wasn't done when I was sober.
Right, didn't come off right. But you had that's your major breaking point.
Well, they usually are when I'm not sober, because this is the time
No
where
shame.
yeah,
That's
this
often
is
helps.
the inhibition is gone.
Can help, yeah. And then you have to process it afterwards, right?
Yeah,
And that can take a long time, and you may not have had real understanding in the moment.
It's even worse than that, because when you do it, in those states, you end up usually stepping on other people's toes
Without control.
And
punishing.
you have to deal with the
apologizing for the punishment that you
instead of the main point that you were trying to
which
make.
was that you had a psychotic break of identity in a way where things shattered, and you can't tell anybody this kind of stuff, right? But this can happen if your world becomes unbearable at some point, and you start speaking the truth maybe, and that can happen to somebody. They just start telling people what they feel, but it's like a new playing field, right? A new identity.
It doesn't have the faith. It doesn't have the rapport. It doesn't have the respect. It doesn't have the trust. That's the problem with the entire outburst.
With doing that?
Yeah.
Because you're taking on a new identity which has no rapport.
Right.
Zero. Yeah. I don't know who you are.
There is no faith in the statements that you're making outside of perhaps whatever previous rapport, right. Outside of this whole thing.
So, like, in an ideal sense, the thing to do would be like to say in the moment, I feel like I've changed. I feel different right now, and our relationship needs to be recontextualized, and we can talk about that later, or something, right? Like, just start breaking it down bite-sized pieces, right?
Or it could be
not to just chop it everything right at the moment.
Or it could just be like, okay, this conversation now needs to come to its end.
Could be, and that could be the way going forward. And even that could signal a greater order being restructured, I guess, if you will.
There's a moment where you set a boundary,
which it automatically sends the whole message.
But also, if that boundary, like, there needs to be like a doorway, or else you're just like completely locked out, or you're completely smashed. Right?
So the doorway is that the boundary isn't totalizing.
Right.
It's that for this exact situation, I don't appreciate that this is happening right now, that you're doing this or whatever.
Right. And
Boom.
I'm saying this
But otherwise,
because,
we're good.
but I'm saying this also because, as I mentioned, most of those times wasn't that sober, and so it's not like something I did. So it was either all in or all out, right? So I'm just recognizing. And this is like the thing about sobriety and
Yeah,
all of
typically
that stuff.
with drinking, you'll be totalizing, like either one side or the other, like taking an extreme.
Right.
So that nuance is out the window.
So yeah, and so my personal experience and what I'm trying to talk about are not necessarily the same thing. Like I'm talking from a perspective of like I failed to do what I'm talking about.
Right.
And the only
From
reason
your experience.
the only reason I'm talking about this is because of that failure and just seeing it for being that. Like I can't talk about this whole truth, rapport, trust, respect, faith deal without admitting to myself like those are the parts where I didn't exercise this, I didn't do that, I didn't right. Like it's a builder, but it's also a critic, and that's I guess that's the value of this kind of meditation. If you were to take it that way,
It's not our choice necessarily what truth we believe. It's up to an experience and adjustments that we can try to make.
I hate the idea of
Not
believing
believe,
in
okay.
truths.
Believe in
Just
truth.
I can't.
Okay, what I meant by that is
I
it's
know.
not our choice how our reality is presented to us.
Right. APS
But
subjective.
we can like shift that by interacting like thoughtfully and all that.
By adopting some.
Like I'm trying to remove the as if anyone's to blame for problems how they are, right?
Right, and the way you see it here, truth, rapport, trust, respect, faith, it removes the bias part of it, and it's not talking about what you're biased for. It's asking you to look into the bias and assess that you have faith, respect, trust, and rapport
These are
for
implications, yes. It's very simple in its presentation. It says this is a structure. And again, we have the holonic triad. This is another product, if you will. The idea, so truth is the title here,
Mhm.
and then we have rapport is the holonic.
Yeah.
Trust being guild, respect model,
Nope.
faith.
Trust is the devotional.
Yeah, guild.
No, the guild is
No, I'm
pragmatic.
HGMA. I'm just trying to relate it to.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
So just going down the HGMA.
Respect is the pragmatic element then.
Yep, the model, and faith, the archetype. That's a super powerful
trust
thing.
is concrete.
This is a
Trust is concrete. That's what you do. Respect is the how you do it, and that's the I. And then you have the two extremes.
respect.
Rapport on one,
Respect is like
faith on the other.
an abstraction, a mapping
Trust.
of abstractions. You've sussed abstractions out of your concrete context with a person or something.
Right.
That's where
So you trust the person, you respect the activities of that person.
right, and trust like faith. Wait, oh wait.
Faith is an extreme, rapport is an extreme.
Right.
Rapport is like you've taken the mythology to its end, and you're like that's the mythology. That's the rapport.
We did these terms well. I feel like.
Yeah. We're closing in on them again because of how they've shown up to be exploitable. Because the exploitation of the charlatan is exactly in this.
Right.
Skip the phase. Skip.
And this is our core.
You sell. You sell your report. You sell your
market.
What was the emotional one again? Trust.
Trust. Yep.
So you can trust me because you gave me all this money and I fulfilled the contract.
What a world, and we'll be right back. Okay. So a new term called side effect and/or collateral damage.
Side effect is the technical term. Collateral damage is a good metaphor.
Yeah.
Here's the deal.
Side effect is the soul. The soul is the side effect.
It is.
There you go.
Shut up.
Go.
So you were mentioning just now that you were referring back to the polyglottic machine.
Yeah.
The Quine machine, or polyglottic Quine relay.
Yep.
The thing that sparked my imagination is your comment about letting something flap in the wind, kind of a thing.
Yep.
Side effect. So the situation is this: you have a single quote-unquote program, right?
Program, yeah.
Say it's a recipe. Say it's a rock song. Polyglottic. Just throwing this shit out there. It's a very random, arbitrary example,
It's an
but
instance
the
of
idea of the polyglotism.
neurochemical
All right. So
etching.
so you run this program. You're aware of only, like, say, the recipe context.
Mm-hmm.
So you're working your way through the recipe, but to another interpreting polyglottic mind, it's a rock song. So what they're reading and what you're writing don't share an underlying context, even though the symbology resonates.
Mm-hmm. And there could be a transformation between those. That would be like the ideal assumption, is that there would be an isomorphism, but there may not be.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to piggyback on your flapping in the wind comment.
Mm-hmm.
So this program has two interpretations, one of which is left to flap in the wind. Its causal nature is still flapping in that wind.
Yeah. So you're saying, like, let's say a chunk of matter, an object, can be interpreted in a certain way, and most of the times we interpret it in a partial way, which isn't its entire being of, like, what that is. And that leaves things unspoken and unsaid, and that's always the way it is. There always is that. And this is a problem of language and interpretation itself, but an incompleteness, that there always will be an incomplete. And
it's not about even just being incomplete. It's context shift as things fly through them. And so the reading of it this way may mean something in the beginning, and then the context changes and it needs to be read the second way.
Right.
And that doesn't get...
There just is no stable, solid point of ground to stand on. Universal, like,
despite
position.
Despite all of our talk about the model being a universal
there is none.
Quantitatively, there is none. Qualitatively, however, there is a universal, and that universal is not because the medium doesn't produce contradiction, but because that's the medium. Qualitatively speaking, nobody gets access to a different medium per se. The content of that medium might be different, but the way it works isn't. Do you really think your brain will work on a different principle than mine? What it would build would work on a different principle than mine?
There's like a minimal faith thing here happening too, I think.
Like, what's in the book is different, but
to twist your brain into this
the way books are made
thing, not. Like to look at another person. Another being.
I'm just a nervous system, man.
Like, what, as like potentially similar than you. It's ever present inquiry.
Look, nobody's confused about what sound is. Nobody's confused about what light is. Nobody's confused about what touch is. Nobody's confused about what thought is.
What I like is an agreement on on whether music, just like chords, sound coherent or not.
And we have an entire model to say yes or no.
Like on a guitar, you could strum the D major and it sounds good, right?
Right, but
you could strum random strings and it's like, what the fuck was that?
And that's why you have words like dissonant.
Right. I like and slash...
I actually forget the rest of them, so you gotta help me out. There's dissonant chords, there is resonant?
Was major, minor, resonant?
Dissonant is when they're supposed to create tension between each other.
Dissonance generally is references the tension.
And dissonance needs to have a resolution, right? Usually in music.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah. Sometimes, if you're clever enough, like Bach, you would like delay the resolution to keep the intensity of the dissonance going, and then you would resolve it in a way that nobody ever actually fucking expected. That's what actually is very fascinating about Bach.
at the
music.
moment yet. Or sometimes
He was very loopy.
sometimes just not even fucking finish the song. You asshole.
Dude, it used to be a fucking thing where it would be a puzzle. Like these composers.
Like what
no.
is the actual key signature of this song?
The composers would leave that off deliberately
What
for another composer.
the audience should say
No.
what
Fuck the audience. They're given these are puzzles for another composer, and
to,
if they're
to
clever
continue on
enough, they'll pick up
and
on
keep
it
hiding
and
it.
actually they'll actually like finish the song. But
I was gonna say keep
but it would be like
hiding
it would be like a point of pride. It's like I know what you did there.
But
I fucking solved it. There you go.
So once it's agreed upon generally that the resolution to the song is a D sharp chord made minor.
I'm not gonna pretend I have any idea
D sharp
as to
minor.
how they did that.
Okay, now the next guy is like, okay, they already solved it. I know it's a D sharp minor. I'll make my own amazing, beautiful thing. So maybe once you call it correctly and you're the first one to really do it.
By today's standards, completing such songs, it's like you have way more freedom. Back then, like 300 years ago, when these guys actually played those games, they actually had very specific expectations of each other.
Yeah.
Because they knew the same theories, right? Like they were working from the same set of laws, if you will.
Right.
So it's actually more interesting to look at it from their context than today's. Today's is like willy-nilly, you can just remix or whatever. But these guys, that's not what they were
structure.
Going for. Like, if you got it wrong, they would be like, no? How about no?
Technical, right?
Yeah, like, how about this wasn't it at all?
Hold up one second. And back. Yep.
So yeah, that's why they wouldn't finish the pieces, because they would know the other composer would be able, if they're good enough, they would be able to pick up the clues and complete the piece exactly as intended.
I don't think it's not that hard.
I'm not saying it's hard, but from my inexperienced perspective,
to make a new piece that challenges and takes the baton from an old piece and in a new way,
that's a different thing.
That's a lot of that's beautiful. It's amazing.
It is amazing, but it's a very different thing. In this case, this wasn't what was intended. What was intended is some guys leaving you specifically
everyone can
puzzle to solve.
Can feel that the key of the song.
With Bach.
I think so. I don't know.
With Bach, I mean, good luck, because
I haven't studied.
So from what I understand, some of his work goes something like this. He would start at a key, and then the key would have a progression, but the progression will blend into another key, and he will pick up that key.
So you're going through themes,
and eventually, like, the whole thing comes right back around to the initial key and loops itself through.
Like exploring like the circle of fifths or whatever it's called on the guitar. Like you go through. Like you can do. It's a polyglot coin.
Except with Bach, it'd be like fifths, sevenths, fulls.
You take the same song, dude. This
guy was insane.
A validation of the coin, really.
That's why it's in the Del Escher Bach.
Because you can have a major song arching over many keys, even though that wouldn't be normally anything.
Okay, so
anybody would do.
So Bach did that with music. Goodell did that with numbers. Escher did that with paintings. Okay, if you know anything about Escher,
is this why the
Escher's paintings always loop back onto themselves? Have you noticed that Escher's paintings? Like, look up Escher right now.
But about Bach, is that what happened? It was a polyglottic coin relay?
Yeah, he was looping in on himself like a motherfucker. He was like one of those people that just like blew everybody away from just by being technical.
Yeah.
But Bach is insane. Like, and I don't even know that much about fucking classical.
That makes sense now. Holy fuck. Goddamn. Neither, but...
So Escher looped in this painting. Bach looped in his music, and Goodell did the exact same thing, but showed how all representations loop. By loop, I mean they begin to discuss themselves. For example, I am not
Mhm.
true in system X. That is a discussion of the self. So all of these systems can be turned to look back and reflect themselves again, over and over and over. The entire discussion about layers that I
Right,
have is reflective. It stems from the same
Mhm.
ideology.
And this all pins on the coin relay idea, being that you can just have a self representation, but translate that to objects that you're interacting with on whatever layer, and then that becomes the layer.
I mean, that's quite a logical leap there. But yes, we start off with an amoeba idea of where a simply hitting a wall depresses it, changes its shape. That change of shape changes the way it can move. That change in ability to move turns it. That
Mhm.
that nullifies the initial depression that happened, and then it can move forward again instead of turning.
Right.
And all of a sudden,
So
it avoided an obstacle.
what we're seeing here is like translation, almost like a set of dashboards, but translation between this and that. Like this part of meat does this, and then we come full circle. The body now becomes spherical again.
Mhm.
There's no indent.
And then all I'm doing is I'm taking that idea and running with it like crazy, right? So instead of the layer just representing the immediate outside,
Well, we're all
you
doing.
have
We're all
another
doing.
layer to
We're all doing
represent to represent the layer that represents the immediate outside. Then you have a layer to represent the layers that represent the layers of the immediate outside. And
Of course,
build
yeah.
and build and build and build and
From
build.
the animal to the human through the archetypes.
Then you go through the nervous system, the neurochemical operating system, and it all adds all of these layers and layers and layers, and then you get a unified storytelling machine, which is the brain.
Which is good.
Well,
Brain
that's
good.
debatable, considering what we've done with it.
Brain good by default. Anything brain do be good.
Have you seen some of these brains?
Actually, shit's fucked up.
Have you seen what they say sometimes?
Shit be fucked up, man.
We have somebody's brain telling them that the Roman salute is not Nazi.
It just evolved like from one thing to another, didn't it?
Oh, bloody hell, pray tell, where did the Romans pick up? Oh, sorry, the Nazis.
Yeah.
Where did they pick up their fucking salute?
It wasn't like Hitler was like, yo, check the Romans out. Isn't that what happened? I guess.
The whole thing was an appeal back to the Roman Empire. What was the Third Reich supposed to be, if not the continuation of the Roman Empire?
I can't believe people are so.
And then you have
Insane.
this asshole doing this.
Yeah, like it's nothing. And what is that? What does that mean? What do you want me to?
I've nobody's seen this image before. Nobody. Isaac. Do you know what fucking blew me away? The Israeli fucking response. You know, the people that still hunt
Yeah.
World War II Nazis and still persecute them in court. And usually just off them after the fact. These guys went out and made a public fucking statement is to not recognize this as a Nazi salute and to be patient because of all of the excitement
of course,
around
yeah,
the
yeah.
elections.
Oh, I wonder who controlled them.
Fucking
It's all a
what?
bunch of stupid ass
Do you
moronic
have any do
bullshit.
you have any
Goddamn.
understanding of how much betrayal that feels like for
Yeah, we
somebody
got like
like me?
20 minutes, but yeah.
No,
I mean, I guess that's just all fuck.
my entire life, I've been fed the line of like, these guys are only interested in hunting down war crime criminals and persecuting them for whatever atrocities that they've done in World War II. The same fucking group of people that represents all of that, the name behind all of that, goes out publicly stating, hold off on calling this Nazism.
What group was that? Who said?
The fucking Jewish government, whatever the fuck exists in Israel to persecute and hunt down all the Nazi war criminals.
So they're like, let that pass. Yeah, it's because they want Starlink satellites. Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm not sure. Don't.
Of course, it's like that.
Surprise is not what's in here. Okay? Betrayal, on the other hand, like, fuck
sure,
you.
Yeah.
Like, how many straws do we need here for somebody like me to basically go, you're a fucking fear. Nothing
Pardon?
of substance about you. I've been fed all of these lies my whole goddamn life, somehow believing some of them. But you're a fucking commercial.
The charlatan.
There's nothing fucking left that's I can say is real. To be honest, like, it's all a fucking game.
Many people are probably in that boat.
Look, again, I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed. To outright fucking say that, though. Oh, that was. I mean, not
to like give cover.
Not unexpected.
Cover for that. Like, what is it? What is it like?
To be so overt about it.
It's funny to be like Nazi. Like, haha. Like, there's like the plausible deniability. What is that? Just to promote it? What's the fucking point of that?
I mean, at this point, you've seen the video, right? Like, you're not going to challenge me on the fact that he did that. This isn't something like a hearsay situation anymore. This is like outright
I was interested too in like what is it? The Roman thing, like, is that that's where the Nazis got it.
Yeah, it's an attempt to excuse it.
Then okay, it's the same thing, isn't it? Like what?
Yeah, yeah.
What?
If you're doing the same shit,
it looks almost the same.
For the same reason the Nazis did them.
It's technically they did it differently, but if the Nazis got it from the Romans, that type of like pompous behavior and signal the meme, like doing that meme, then.
And if you happen to actually know that if you do that kind of thing and it looks like Nazism, but you're trying to excuse yourself, oh, it's the Romans. Again, aren't you like fucking aware that you're doing
even the
this
Romans? Why would you want to fucking promote the Romans? Like, that's the second half of this discussion.
Right, because the Roman Empire is idealized.
Why the fuck would you want to do that even?
Without any of the realization of how fucked up it was. People like this see the Roman Empire as the pinnacle of civilization. They actually feel that was the correct course in civilization and history.
Unapologetic,
They don't seem to recognize like the actual fundamental destruction that it actually laid upon the earth.
The accelerationism of the system, that everybody's always falling down very fast, but also clawing upwards at the same time as fast as they can. So that's a situation we're in, and that's not a basis for stability in your life or anything, or society. It's just a castle in the sky being torn down as fast as anybody can do it.
Which actually moves us into being able to make the next statement. That all of our technological advancements as a species, all of our capacity for technology as a whole,
there's a lot,
is not a basis for
it's
advancement.
Impressive.
It's not a basis for advancement.
Do you call it progress?
No.
It is progress in a sense, in a constrained, confined context, yes. Yes, it's progress.
Some systems are progressing, sure.
Some are not. That's it. Or not.
The biological ones do not gain fuck all from that progress. The very biological systems that are responsible for accelerating this progress
isn't this like
actually benefiting
a fundamental folly or fallacy of the like technological process bros?
It's the brighter future. It's heaven. It's the heaven myth.
Yeah, but it's more and more detached from the very life that gives it motive, energy, that sustains.
Right. It becomes about something totally else.
Right? Something else. And this is a dysmorphism in a layer, a la like Hofstadter, Strange Loop, all that.
Lack of mapping. Dysmorphism here means lack of mapping, lack of isomorphism. So we're not talking about cognitive distinction. We make this isomorphic, we make this dysmorphic. It's a lack of an observable mapping.
In other words, a quality.
It doesn't. It ain't there.
Yep. Isomorphism can be felt as a quality. That's a thing to be harnessed, not harnessed, but acknowledged and made kind of central.
Can I give this a little bit more context?
The stage is yours.
I don't know if you remember this, but the word mimicry.
Sure.
Mimicry is a fundamental underlying principle behind them all. Mimicry stands for, mimicry is what defines our conceptualization of time and space.
This is so tight with the polyglot equine too as well, sorry.
So mimicry across space is synchronic. If you have this and that mirrored at the same time, it's synchronous. Mm-hmm. And then you have a linear mimicry, which is mimicry over time. Which means like something adopts the shape of something else because that shape existed in space-time, and then the next moment moved on, and that caused the next iteration of configurations, and that configuration reflects back the previous configuration out of which it came. So as things move through time, right? Present moment mimics the past moment, and the future moment is going to reflect the present moment, and so on and so forth. So it's just a simple concept. It's not like meant to be very...
A tendency of the past to come into the future.
Right.
A connection between the two.
How is the future shaped the way it is if the past was not shaped that way? Right? So that is a reflection going forward. Mm-hmm. So this mimicry ideal is at the heart of everything else.
But we got 10 minutes, honest.
Another example.
We got 3 minutes.
Another example. Here. Another example is like no particle can be observed without the usage of some other particle. Right?
Right.
So you never see a photon. You never see an electron. You see an effect bouncing off of those phenomena.
Through many layers, potentially, of effect.
Right. So again, we're seeing this mirroring effect, mimicry effect. This is that, is this, is that, is this.
Polycoin.
And that's just the structure of the universe we're in. So you take that idea, and just carry it forward. But you build out of that. Is it going to behave the same way? You move forward through that. So taking that idea of you don't really see a particle, you only see its effects. Like that amoeba hitting a wall. It doesn't know there's a wall there. It knows there's a depression.
It's like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You can either know the exact location of a particle, or you can know where it's going and how fast.
But never both.
No. So you never know ultimately where something is. Or like you never pin anything down. Like we're suspended in this kind of tension of like opposites.
That brings
right?
us to our primordial our archetype discussion. That's like
Order,
why
chaos,
uncertainty
order,
is
chaos, and all that. Yeah.
But also the absurdity
of it all. Yeah,
right. Like
the absurdity of
no matter how much logic you put down onto the system,
your system is always has cracks below it, which are never seen, no matter what the system.
And if you see one crack, it means it hides another.
Right. So that's an unrelenting challenge to this. It's not a rigorous it is rigorous, but not like everything is in its place, like a reification of some model. Like this is the reality. This is how it is. You can't have a solid view of reality in some senses, fundamentally.
Right.
Like this is what exists.
Because just take that picture. I just extended it to the amiibo. But do you remember what I extended the amiibo further into? I said, hey, how about you take that reflective layer of the outside and turn it inwards, and then add a few more.
Yep. And look at your self-regulating environment as a new domain for learning.
But not only that, but going back to what I was just building up from the get-go, the mimicry. Over space, over time, over space, over time. You extend that into more complex layers and layers and layers and layers, where each one mimics the last, or all of the last layers. Like the way our mind maps
You're talking about like
molecules.
Ingressing protocols, or like what are you
No, this is this is just like maybe academic, but
sure, descriptive structure.
Yeah, it's not meant to be like used as a
That's
personal
what
lesson.
That's what I got.
It's not a personal lesson. It's more like to bridge the gap between the most basic assumption of mimicry that we've started from way back when, to all the way to like how complex adaptive systems would utilize said mimicry, where it's what we're calling isomorphisms, mappings, and all of that, right? And again, if you expand the number of layers that deal with this, you have reflections of reflections of reflections of reflections of reflections, mimicry of mimicry of mimicry of mimicry. So the whole structure is like basically based on this copying that, this copying that, this copying this.
At the basic levels, we've got this polyglot equine relay layer, and on top of that, a mimicry layer. It's kind of like what I'm kind of
maybe the other way around. You have your mimicry layer, in which everything mimics something, somehow. It could be the most direct mimicry, it could be the most exotic mimicry. And then, as you build up another layer, because a whole expression is a signal, right? You never literally leave the lower layers. You just get more convoluted and complex versions of what mimicry means. So a layer up here mimicking a layer up there could look like a complete clusterfuck in the actual medium over here.
This is like participation. Is mimicry as participation? Like taking some model on to try and bridge between layers. Like I'm just mimicking this, and
that's the stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yes. You find something there, you don't know its meaning, but you copy the action, because the outcome of the action has that positive affect.
Participation dynamics. We're gonna call it there.
It's a positive feedback.
We got to pack up. So, been great, a pleasure, and we'll check you all later.